Warning: the case you're about to hear was recovered from the restricted British Museum archive. Its contents have never been authorised for public release. Proceed at your own discretion. The British Museum. Sub-Basement 3. Department of Anomalous Antiquities. My name is Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Senior Archivist, Custodian of Restricted Collections. What you are about to hear has been recovered from sealed files, letters, journals, and testimonies once thought too disturbing for public record. Every statement you hear is drawn from Britain's forgotten centuries, the whispered history that hides between faith and fear. These are the National Occult Archives, filed, preserved, never closed. The following document was never intended for public release. Case File NOA1587T. Classification: Merchants Road Testament. Date of statement: 23rd September 1587. Location: Devon Cornwall Border Road, England. Author: Thomas Wardell, wool merchant. Testimony of Thomas Wardell. As Thomas Wardell, merchant of Exeter, do testify about what befell me upon the old road between Devon and Cornwall. I departed Launceston at dawn with 2 carts of wool bound for Plymouth. The September morning was clear, and I expected no trouble on the journey. My apprentice rode beside me, and we made good time through the morning hours. Near midday, we approached the stone bridge at Greystone Cross. A figure stood in the middle of the road ahead. At first, I thought him a beggar seeking alms. As we drew closer, I saw he wore the clothes of a gentleman, though much weathered. He did not move as our carts approached. I called out to him to step aside. He turned his face toward us, and my blood went cold. His eyes were wrong, too dark, like wells with no bottom. My apprentice pulled his horse to a stop. The stranger opened his mouth and spoke words I did not understand. Latin, I think, though I know only a few phrases from church. His voice was not one voice but many, speaking together. The horses began to panic, pulling against their traces. I tried to guide my cart around the man, but he moved with unnatural speed. He placed his hand upon my cartwheel. The wood beneath his touch grew black as if burned. More Latin poured from his mouth, faster now, urgent. My apprentice began to weep, covering his ears. I struck at the stranger with my riding crop. The leather passed through his arm, as if through smoke. He turned his hollow gaze upon me fully. In that moment, I felt something trying to enter my thoughts. Cold fingers of thought that were not mine, pressing at the edges of my mind. I recited the Lord's Prayer aloud, stumbling over the words in my terror. The stranger stepped back. His mouth continued to move, forming Latin phrases, but no sound emerged. He pointed down the road behind us. When I turned to look, I saw nothing but the empty path we had travelled. I looked back, and the stranger was gone. The burned mark remained on my cartwheel. My apprentice could not speak for 2 days after. He left my service the following week and entered a monastery. I have travelled that road many times since. I always pass the bridge at Greystone Cross before noon or after sunset. Never at midday. Never when the sun stands directly overhead. Thomas Wardell, wool merchant. Devon Cornwall Border Road, 23rd September 1587. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The burned wheel was documented in Plymouth City records when Wardell arrived. The apprentice, Richard Cole, remained at Buckfast Abbey until his death in 1634. His confession upon entering the monastery mentions seeing the many inside the one. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1629K. Classification: Courier's journey record. Date of statement: 11th November 1629. Location: Yorkshire Moors, England. Author: William Blackwood. Royal Courier. Record of William Blackwood. First, William Blackwood, courier in service to His Majesty, do record the events of the 11th of November. I carried dispatches from York to Newcastle upon Tyne. The November fog was thick upon the moors that evening. I chose to continue rather than seek lodging, as my messages were urgent. The road across the moors is straight and well travelled. I knew it well from previous journeys. Around 8 in the evening, I heard footsteps behind my horse. The sound was clear despite the fog, boot heels striking the packed earth. I turned, but could see no one in the grey mist. The footsteps continued, matching my pace exactly. I spurred my horse to a faster walk. The footsteps quickened as well, never falling behind. I stopped my horse completely and listened. The footsteps continued for 3 more paces, then stopped. In the silence that followed, I heard breathing. Not the breathing of a man, but something that sounded like wind through a narrow passage. I called out, asking who walked there. No answer came, only that strange hollow breathing. I drew my pistol, though my hands shook. The fog seemed to thicken around me. I fired into the mist behind me. The sound echoed strangely, as if the shot came from far away rather than my own hand. The breathing stopped. For a moment, I thought whatever followed me had departed. Then the footsteps began again, this time from in front of me, walking toward me through the fog. Slow, measured steps coming closer. I wheeled my horse around and rode back the way I had come. The footsteps followed, always just behind, never quite catching up, but never falling back. For 2 miles I rode with that sound pursuing me. Only when I reached the stone marker at Whitby Cross did the footsteps cease. I stopped, gasping, and looked back into the fog. A shape stood there at the edge of my vision, tall and thin, barely darker than the mist around it. It did not move, only stood and watched. I rode through the night to the inn at Skelton. The innkeeper said I looked like death itself when I arrived. I returned to York by a different road. The dispatches reached Newcastle 3 days late. My superiors questioned my delay, but I could not tell them the truth. William Blackwood, Royal Courier, Yorkshire Moors, 11th November 1629. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. 3 other courier reports from this road exist in our collection, all mentioning footsteps in fog. The phenomena appears concentrated near the Whitby Cross marker. Local histories mention the area as an execution site in the 1400s. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1438M. Classification: Pilgrim's account. Date of statement: 5th April 1438. Location: Sherwood Forest Road, Nottinghamshire, England. Author: Brother Edmund of Canterbury. Account of Brother Edmund Brother Edmund, Franciscan friar. Do account for what I witnessed upon the road through Sherwood. I travelled alone from Nottingham to Worksop as part of my pilgrimage to northern shrines. The April day was fair when I entered the forest. The old Roman road runs straight through the densest part of the wood. I had walked perhaps 3 miles when the birdsong ceased. The silence fell so suddenly that I stopped walking. No wind moved through the trees. No creature stirred in the undergrowth. The afternoon sun still shone through the branches, but the light seemed different somehow, flatter, less warm. I continued walking, uneasy now. Ahead, where the road curved slightly, I saw a figure standing among the trees, not on the road, but perhaps 10 paces into the forest. A woman in a grey dress, her back to me. She stood perfectly still, facing deeper into the woods. I called out to her, asking if she required assistance. She did not turn or acknowledge my voice in any way. I left the road and walked toward her, thinking perhaps she was unwell. As I drew near, I saw that her dress was very old, of a style my grandmother might have worn. The fabric looked heavy and damp, though the day was dry. I reached out to touch her shoulder. My hand passed through her, not through empty air, but through something cold and thick like water. I stumbled backward. She turned her head slowly to look at me. Her face was grey as her dress. Her eyes were open, but showed only white. No iris or pupil. Her mouth opened, but no sound emerged. She raised one arm and pointed deeper into the forest. I followed her gesture and saw them. Dozens of figures standing among the trees, all in grey, all facing away from the road, all perfectly still. Some stood close enough that I could see them clearly. Others were distant shapes between the trunks. The woman in front of me pointed again, more urgently. Her mouth continued to move without sound. I backed away toward the road, unable to look away from those silent figures. When my feet found the packed earth of the path, they vanished. All of them, in an instant. The birdsong returned. The wind moved through the leaves again. But the cold remained in my bones for hours after. I did not stop until I reached Worksop that evening. I have walked that road twice since, always during full daylight. I have never seen them again, but I feel watched when I pass that place. Brother Edmund of Canterbury, Sherwood Forest Road, Nottinghamshire, 5th April, 1438. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The location described matches what locals call the Grey Woman's Stand. Folklore suggests the site was used for plague burials in the 1300s. Surveys of the area have found no evidence of graves. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1705W. Classification: Merchants Road Journal. Date of statement: 19th October 1705. Location: Somerset Wiltshire border, England. Author: James Hartwell. Spice merchant. Journal entry of James Hartwell, 1st James Hartwell. Do record this account while my memory remains clear. I travelled from Bristol to Salisbury with a cart of imported spices and fabrics. The October evening was drawing in as I passed through the border country. I know this road well, having travelled it monthly for 15 years. Near the old drover's track that crosses the main road, I saw a coach ahead. It stood motionless in the middle of the path. As I drew nearer, I saw it was a fine vehicle, black lacquered with brass fittings. 4 horses stood in their traces, but they did not move or make any sound. No driver sat upon the box. I called out, asking if anyone required help. No answer came from within the coach. I drew my cart alongside and set my brake. The coach door hung slightly open. Through the gap, I could see a woman's hand resting on the seat. The skin was very pale, almost grey. I stepped down and approached the coach door. I knocked and called out again. The hand did not move. I pulled the door fully open. The interior was empty. No woman sat inside, though I had clearly seen her hand moments before. The seats were covered in dust, as if unused for many years. I stepped back, confused. A sound came from behind me, from my own cart. It was my horse, whinnying in distress. I turned and saw that my cart had moved. It now stood 10 paces back down the road. I had set the brake myself, and the road was level. I walked back to my cart, keeping the coach in view. As I reached my horse, I heard the coach door close behind me. I spun around. The coach was moving now, rolling away down the road. No driver guided it. The horses walked in perfect unison, their hooves making no sound on the packed earth. I watched it travel perhaps 50 yards before the evening mist obscured it. I climbed onto my cart and continued, though my hands shook on the reins. When I reached the next village, I asked about the black coach. The innkeeper went pale. He said 3 travellers had reported seeing it over the past month. One of them, a farmer named Weatherby, had looked inside. He fell ill that same night and died within a week. The physician could find no cause. I told the innkeeper I had seen only a hand. He advised me to have a priest pray for my protection. I did so the following Sunday. That was 6 months ago. I still travel that road, but I pass the drover's track crossing before dusk. If I see the black coach, I turn back. James Hartwell, spice merchant, Somerset, Wiltshire border, 19th October 1705. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, parish records, confirmer, William Weatherby, died in October 1705. The black coach has appeared in local accounts since the 1680s, always on the same stretch of road. No physical coach matching the description exists in county records. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1554D. Classification. Peddler's testimony. Date of statement 7th August 1554. Location, Lancashire Hill Road, England. Author, Robert Marsden, travelling peddler. Testimony of Robert Marsden, Robert Marsden, peddler of household goods. Do testify about the events of the 7th of August. I travelled from Lancaster toward Kendal with my pack and walking stick. The August sun was high when I began the climb up Beacon Hill. The road rises steeply there, winding through rocky outcrops. I stopped halfway up to rest and take water from my flask. A stone marker stood beside the road, old and weathered. I sat with my back against it and closed my eyes for a moment. When I opened them, the sun had moved. It now stood low in the western sky. Hours had passed, though I had closed my eyes for mere seconds. I stood quickly, confused and alarmed. My pack lay where I had set it, but the contents were arranged differently. Small items I knew I had packed at the bottom now rested on top. A chill went through me despite the summer warmth. I looked around, seeking some explanation. The road appeared the same, yet different. The rocks seemed placed in new positions. A tree that I remembered leaning south now leaned north. I began walking quickly up the hill, wanting to leave that place. With each step, I felt as though I was moving through thick air. My legs grew heavy, though the path was no steeper than before. I heard my own footsteps, but they sounded distant. When I reached the top of the hill, I looked back. A figure stood at the stone marker where I had rested. It wore my coat, my hat. It carried my pack. It was me. I watched myself sit down and lean back against the marker. I watched myself close my eyes. I understood then what was happening. I was caught in something that repeated itself. I turned and ran down the far side of the hill. Behind me, I heard footsteps matching my own. I did not look back. I ran until I reached the village of Kendal as night was falling. When I entered the inn, the keeper said I looked as though I had seen my own death. Perhaps I had. I sold all my goods the next day and purchased a seat on a coach to York. I have never returned to that road. Sometimes, in dreams, I see myself still sitting at that marker, still closing my eyes for just a moment, still trapped in that endless August afternoon. Robert Marsden, Travelling Pedlar, Lancashire Hill Road, 7th August, 1554. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The stone marker described no longer exists. Removed during road widening in 1823. Workers reported feeling disoriented and losing time during its removal. The project supervisor ordered it broken apart rather than relocated. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA1678P. Classification. Friar's record. Date of statement. 2nd March, 1678. Location, Welsh Borders, Herefordshire, England. Author, Father Silas Webb, Dominican friar. Record of Father Silas Webb. Verse, Father Silas Webb. Do record what occurred on the road between Leominster and Kington. I travelled to visit a sick parishioner in a remote farmhouse. The March evening was cold, with rain threatening in dark clouds. I walked alone, as was my custom, carrying only my Bible and a small lantern. The road was empty of other travellers. I had gone perhaps 4 miles when I heard the sound. A scraping noise, like metal dragging across stone. It came from behind me, moving closer. I turned, but saw nothing on the road. The sound stopped when I stopped. It resumed when I continued walking. For half a mile, this pattern continued. The scraping always behind me, always hidden. My lantern light seemed to grow dimmer, though the oil was fresh. I began to pray aloud, the words of the 23rd Psalm. The scraping grew louder, as if angered by my prayer. I walked faster, my heart pounding. Ahead, I saw a milestone marker at the roadside. As I passed it, something struck my lantern from my hand. The light went out instantly. I stood in darkness, the rain beginning to fall. The scraping circled me now, moving from one side to the other. In the darkness, I saw shapes moving. My belongings, I realized. My Bible floated in the air before me, its pages turning rapidly. My rosary bead spun in circles, suspended by nothing. The small knife I carried for cutting bread rose from my belt pouch. It hung point down above my head. I recited every prayer I knew, my voice shaking. The objects moved faster, swirling around me like leaves in a storm. My Bible's pages tore, scattering into the rain. The rosary beads snapped from their string and fell like hail. The knife began to descend slowly toward my upturned face. I threw myself to the ground, covering my head with my arms. All sound ceased. When I dared to look up, everything lay scattered on the road around me. The knife had embedded itself in the ground inches from where my head had been. My torn Bible pages were already turning to pulp in the rain. I gathered what I could and ran. I reached the farmhouse an hour later, soaked and shaking. The family there gave me shelter and dry clothes. I tended to the sick woman, but I could not stay the night as planned. I returned to Leominster by a different road at first light. The bishop questioned me about my torn Bible. I told him I had fallen in the rain. I could not speak the truth. Who would believe it? Father Silas Webb, Dominican friar, Welsh Borders, Herefordshire, 2nd March, 1678. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The milestone marker was examined in 1954. Deep scratches in the stone, consistent with metal scraping, could not be explained by road maintenance. The patterns suggest deliberate marking rather than accidental damage. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1732R. Classification: Messenger's account. Date of statement: 14th January 1732. Location: Cornwall Coast Road, England. Author: Henry Aldridge, private messenger. Account of Henry Aldridge. Henry Aldridge. Do account for the night of the 14th of January. I carried letters from Truro to Penzance for a merchant house. The January night was clear, but bitterly cold. A full moon lit the road well enough to travel safely. The coast road runs close to the cliffs there, with the sea below. Around midnight, I heard voices ahead. They were whispering, though I could not make out words. The sound carried clearly in the cold air. I slowed my horse and listened. Many voices, all whispering together. They seemed to come from the road itself. I dismounted and led my horse forward carefully. The whispering grew louder with each step. It surrounded me, coming from all directions now. Still, I could understand no words, only the urgent susurrus of many voices speaking at once. My horse refused to move further. I left him and walked ahead on foot. The moon cast my shadow long across the road. As I watched, my shadow began to move independently. It pulled away from my feet, sliding across the packed earth. Other shadows appeared, though nothing stood to cast them. Dark shapes spreading across the moonlit road like stains. The whispering intensified, becoming almost a hiss. I stood frozen, unable to move or look away. The shadows began to form shapes. Figures, I thought, though they remained flat against the ground. They moved toward me, dozens of them. Shadow people pulling themselves across the earth. I found my voice and shouted at them to stop. The whispering changed. It became laughter, cold and mirthless. My own shadow reached out and touched my boots. I felt coldness spread up through my feet into my legs. With effort, I stepped backward. The cold followed, climbing higher. I turned and ran back to my horse. The animal was wild with terror, pulling against his reins. I mounted, and we fled back toward Truro. The whispering pursued us for perhaps a mile before fading. When I reached the town, I went straight to the parish church. The vicar let me in, though it was past 1 in the morning. I spent the remainder of the night in the sanctuary. My feet remained cold for 3 days after. No fire or blanket could warm them. On the 4th day, the feeling returned suddenly. I delivered the letters by a different route, travelling by daylight. I have not walked that stretch of coast road at night since. Henry Aldridge, private messenger, Cornwall Coast Road, 14th January, 1732. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Local tradition holds that this section of road was built over an old burial ground. Church records from the 1500s mention the whispering place, but provide no details. The phenomenon appears most frequently during full moons. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1596L. Classification: Traveller's statement. Date of statement: 28th June, 1596. Location: Peak District, Derbyshire, England. Author: Edward Thorne, cloth trader. Statement of Edward Thorne. First, Edward Thorne, cloth trader of Manchester, do state, what befell me in the Peak District. I travelled from Buxton to Sheffield with samples of my wares. The June day was overcast, with mist clinging to the moorland. The road through the hills is lonely, passing through miles of empty country. Near Stanage Edge, where the road runs between high rocks, I saw a figure ahead. It stood in the centre of the path, perfectly still. As I drew closer, I saw it was a man dressed in black. His clothes were of good quality but old-fashioned in cut. He wore a broad-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. I called out a greeting. He did not respond or move. I stopped my horse 20 paces from him. He raised his head slowly, and I saw his face. It was pale as milk, with features that seemed somehow wrong. Too smooth, like a wax figure. His eyes were the worst, black from edge to edge with no white showing. Those eyes fixed upon me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. He raised one hand and pointed at me. His mouth opened, but the voice that emerged was not human. It sounded like wind through a crack in stone, low and constant, with an odd resonance. Then he spoke words I recognized as Latin, the same phrase repeated again and again. I know some Latin from my schooling. I understood the words, "It sees you, it knows you, it follows you." He began to walk toward me. His movements were fluid but unnatural, as if his joints bent in ways they should not. I wheeled my horse around and rode back the way I had come. When I looked over my shoulder, he still walked after me, not running, just walking at that same steady pace. But he kept perfect distance behind me, never gaining, never falling back. For 3 miles I rode, and always he maintained that exact distance. I came to a crossroads and took the southern road. He continued straight ahead on the main path, not following. He stopped in the middle of the intersection and turned to watch me go. Even at that distance, I felt those black eyes upon me. I reached Sheffield by a roundabout route, arriving well after dark. I made inquiries about the man in black. An old woman in the inn said others had seen him over the years, always at Stanage Edge, always speaking Latin, always following, but only to the crossroads. She said those who heard his words completely had strange luck. Afterward, some grew wealthy beyond reason. Others lost everything within a month. She asked what words I had heard. I told her. She crossed herself and would speak no more. That was 5 years ago. My fortunes had been neither exceptionally good nor exceptionally bad. But sometimes, in crowds, I feel eyes upon me. When I turn, I see nothing unusual. But the feeling remains. Edward Thorne, Cloth Trader, Skid District, Derbyshire, 28th June, 1596, Archivist. Note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Similar accounts from Stanage Edge span from 1560 to 1788. All describe a figure in black speaking Latin at the crossroads. The location was reportedly a gallows site in medieval times. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1641N. Classification: Merchants Road Record. Date of statement: 9th May 1641. Location: Forest of Dean, Gloucestershire, England. Author: William Granger. Iron Merchants, a record of William Granger was. William Granger. Do record the events that occurred on the Dean Road. I transported iron bars from the forest forges to Bristol. My cart was heavy laden, requiring 2 strong horses. The May afternoon was warm, with sunlight filtering through the forest canopy. The road is well maintained through the forest, being much used for commerce. I had travelled perhaps 6 miles when my horses stopped suddenly. They would not move forward despite my urging. Both animals trembled, their ears flat against their heads. I climbed down to check for obstruction in the road. I found nothing blocking the path, yet the horses refused to advance. I walked ahead to investigate. 20 paces from my cart, I felt it, a coldness that had nothing to do with temperature. It pressed against my chest like a physical weight. Each step forward made the sensation stronger. The forest around me seemed to darken, though the sun still shone. All sounds ceased. No birds, no insects, no wind in the leaves. I stopped, suddenly afraid. Before me, the air itself seemed different, thicker somehow, as if I looked through old glass. Then I saw them. Eyes, dozens of pairs of eyes, watching from the shadows between the trees. They glowed with a pale yellow light. They did not blink. They did not move. They only watched. I stood transfixed, unable to look away. The eyes began to move closer, gliding forward through the darkness beneath the trees. Still, they revealed nothing of what possessed them. No bodies, no faces, only those gleaming orbs. They formed a semicircle around me, perhaps 10 paces distant. The cold intensified until my breath showed white in the air. I tried to step backward, but my legs would not obey. One pair of eyes moved closer than the others. They rose, as if whatever owned them had stood up. Now they floated at the height of a tall man's face. They regarded me with an intelligence that was anything but human. A sound emerged from the forest, low and rumbling, like a growl, but with a quality no animal could produce. The other eyes responded, making similar sounds. They spoke to each other. I do not know how else to describe it. They communicated through those terrible sounds. Then, as suddenly as they appeared, they vanished. The warmth returned. The forest sounds resumed. I stumbled back to my cart. My horses still trembled but allowed me to turn them around. I returned to the forge and refused to deliver the load that day. My employer was furious, calling me a fool and a coward. I told him only that the road was unsafe. Another carter took the load the next day. He completed the journey without incident. I have made that journey dozens of times since, always in full daylight, never alone. I have not seen the eyes again. But that stretch of road feels wrong now. The trees seem to lean in closer there. The shadows seem deeper. I hurry my horses through it and do not look into the forest. William Granger, Iron Merchant, Forest of Dean, Gloucestershire, 9th May, 1641. Archivist. Vist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The Forest of Dean has produced numerous anomalous reports over centuries. This account's mention of multiple entities is unusual. Most sightings describe solitary phenomena. The location has been investigated 3 times with no conclusive findings. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA1718S classification. Night's travel account. Date of statement. 15th December, 1718. Location, Salisbury Plain, Wiltshire, England. Author, Sir Marcus Ashford, Knight of the Realm. Account of Sir Marcus Ashford vs. Sir Marcus Ashford. Do account for what transpired upon Salisbury Plain. I rode from Winchester towards Salisbury on business of the Crown. The December day was cold and grey, with snow threatening. I travelled alone, as the matter was confidential. The plain is empty country, with ancient stones marking the landscape. Near the old monuments, my horse began to act strangely. She shied and whinnied, though I could see nothing amiss. I dismounted to calm her. As I stood beside the road, I noticed something peculiar. The same magpie had flown past me 3 times. I was certain it was the same bird, having noted a damaged feather in its left wing. I thought little of it until I saw the rider. A man on a grey horse, approaching from the direction I had come. He rode past me with a nod, continuing towards Salisbury. I remounted and continued my journey. After perhaps 10 minutes, I saw the magpie again, flying past with that same damaged feather. Moments later, the rider on the grey horse approached again, from behind me. He rode past with the same nod, his face expressing no recognition. I called out to him, but he did not stop or respond. I felt a creeping unease in my stomach. I urged my horse to a faster pace. The magpie flew past, again. The rider appeared again. The same nod, the same grey horse, the same direction. I tried a different approach. I stopped my horse and dismounted, standing in the centre of the road. I waited for the rider to appear. He came, as I knew he would. This time, I stepped directly into his path. He rode straight through me. I felt nothing, saw nothing change, but he passed through the space where I stood. He continued down the road and faded from view. The magpie flew past. I understood then that I was caught in something that repeated, a loop of time that played over and over. I looked around desperately for something to break the pattern. The ancient stones stood dark against the grey sky. I ran toward them, off the road, through the frost-hardened grass. Behind me, I heard hoofbeats. My own horse, I thought, following me. But when I looked back, I saw dozens of riders, all on grey horses, all riding in the same direction, all wearing the same blank expression. I reached the stones and pressed myself against the nearest one. The riders passed on the road, one after another. The magpie flew in circles above them. I counted 47 riders before they ceased. The last one turned his head and looked directly at me. He smiled, but it was not a kind expression. Then he too faded away. The magpie landed on the stone above my head. It cocked its head and seemed to study me. Then it flew off towards Salisbury. I waited an hour before returning to the road. My horse stood where I had left her. I continued to Salisbury by a different route, skirting the plain. I completed my business and returned to Winchester immediately. I have travelled that road only once since, in full daylight with an armed escort. Nothing unusual occurred, but I saw the stones in the distance, and I wondered how many travellers had been caught in that endless repetition. How many still ride that grey horse past the ancient monuments? Sir Marcus Ashford, Knight of the Realm, Salisbury Plain, Wiltshire, 15th December, 1718. Archivists note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Salisbury Plain, phenomena have been documented since Roman times. The stones mentioned likely predate recorded history. 3 other accounts in our archive describe temporal distortions near this location, all within a 2-mile radius of the ancient monuments. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1537B. Classification: Pilgrim's Road Testimony. Date of statement: 3rd October, 1537. Location: Canterbury Road, Kent, England. Author: Margaret Finch, widow and pilgrim. Testimony of Margaret Finch Thirst, Margaret Finch, widow of Maidstone. Do testify about my pilgrimage to Canterbury. I walked the old pilgrim road to pray at the shrine of St. Thomas. The October morning was bright when I departed Maidstone. I carried only a small bundle of food and my rosary. Other pilgrims travelled the road that day, and I felt safe. Near midday, I stopped to rest at a stone watering trough. A chapel stood nearby, old and half-ruined. The other pilgrims had moved ahead, and I sat alone. As I drank from the trough, I heard singing. A woman's voice, singing a hymn I did not recognize. The words were Latin, the melody strange and beautiful. I followed the sound to the ruined chapel. The door hung open, and sunlight fell through the broken roof. Inside, I saw her. A woman knelt before the altar, her back to me. She wore white, as if prepared for her wedding day. Her hair hung loose and black down her back. She sang without pause, her voice echoing in the small space. I did not wish to disturb her prayers. I turned to leave. The singing stopped. I heard her stand, her dress rustling. I looked back. She remained kneeling, her back still toward me. But her head had turned completely around. Her face looked at me over her shoulder, at an angle no living person could achieve. Her eyes were closed, but her mouth still moved, forming words without sound. I could not move, could not scream. Her head continued to turn. It rotated further, far beyond what bones and sinews should allow. Still, her body remained kneeling in prayer position. Only her head moved, turning and turning. Her mouth opened wider. A sound came out, but it was not her voice. It was many voices together, all speaking Latin. The words came faster and faster, tumbling over each other. I recognized some phrases from the Mass, but others were unknown to me. Her eyes opened. They were white, nothing but white from edge to edge. She smiled, and her mouth kept opening. Too wide, wider than any mouth should stretch. I ran. Behind me the voices followed, growing louder. They chased me down the road like a wind. I did not stop running until I reached a group of travellers. 3 men and their wives, heading to Canterbury. I begged to walk with them. They agreed, though they looked at me strangely. One of the men said I had gone pale as death. We passed the ruined chapel together an hour later. It stood empty and silent. The men went inside to investigate. They found nothing unusual, no woman, no sign anyone had been there in years. But in the dust before the altar, they found marks, knee prints, as if someone had knelt in prayer, and beside them, small prints, as if someone had walked on their hands. The men returned quickly, and we continued our journey. I completed my pilgrimage and returned home. But sometimes, at night, I hear that singing, distant and faint, as if from far away. Latin words in a beautiful voice. I pray they grow no closer. Margaret Finch, widow and pilgrim, the Canterbury Road, Kent. 3rd October 1537. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The ruined chapel was demolished in 1624. Prior to its destruction, it was known locally as the Singing Place. No records explain this designation. The chapel's original dedication is unknown, all church documents having been lost. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA 1693. H classification. Merchant's Journey record. Date of statement 21st July 1693. Location Dartmoor, Devon, England. Author Samuel Blackwell. Tin Merchant. Record of Samuel Blackwell. First Sir Samuel Blackwell. Do record the events of my crossing of Dartmoor. I travelled from Tavistock to Ashburton with payment for tin purchases. I carried a considerable sum and therefore travelled armed. The July day was hot, unusual for the moor. The sky was clear blue, without a cloud in sight. I followed the old road across the high moor. Around midday, the sun seemed to grow dim. I looked up, thinking clouds had appeared. The sky remained clear, yet the light had weakened. Everything took on a grey cast, as if dusk approached. But my pocket watch showed only 12:30. The air grew cold despite the season. My horse began to act nervously, tossing her head. Ahead, the road seemed to end in a wall of fog, a line of grey mist that crossed the path completely. It did not move or drift as normal fog would. It stood like a solid barrier. I approached slowly, uncertain whether to continue. As I drew near, I heard bells. The sound was clear and musical, coming from within the fog. Church bells, I thought, though I knew no church stood nearby. They rang in a pattern, as if calling to worship. The horse refused to enter the fog. I dismounted and led her forward. We crossed into the grey together. Immediately, all sound from behind ceased. The birdsong, the wind, my own footsteps all vanished. Only the bells continued, louder now. The fog pressed close, limiting my vision to a few feet. I could not see the road beneath my feet. I walked carefully, testing each step. The bells rang on all sides now, surrounding me. Then I saw the lights, small flames moving through the fog at chest height. Dozens of them, like candles floating in the air. They moved in a procession, passing nearby but not approaching. I stood still, holding my horse's bridle tightly. Shapes moved behind the lights. People, I thought at first, but they cast no shadows despite their candles. And their movements were wrong somehow. They glided rather than walked. The bells reached a crescendo, then silence. Complete and absolute. The lights stopped moving. All of them turned toward me simultaneously. I felt their attention, though I could see no faces. My horse tried to bolt, nearly pulling me off my feet. I held on and backed away from the lights. They began to advance, moving together, closing in. I ran, leading my terrified horse. Behind me, the fog seemed to follow. I could hear nothing, see nothing but grey. My lungs burned, but I did not stop. Then suddenly, I was through. The fog ended as abruptly as it began. I stumbled into bright sunlight and normal warmth. I looked back. The wall of fog remained, but it was receding, pulling back across the moor like a tide. Within moments, it had vanished completely. The sky was clear. The sun stood high. My watch showed only 1 minute past 12:30. I had been in the fog for what seemed like 10 minutes or more, but barely a minute had passed. I mounted and rode quickly across the moor. I did not stop until I reached Ashburton late that afternoon. I told no one what had occurred, but I hired 2 armed men to accompany me on the return journey. We crossed the moor without incident, but I will never travel that road alone again. Samuel Blackwell, Tin Merchant, Dartmoor, Devon, 21st July 1693. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Dartmoor fog phenomena are well documented in regional folklore. This account's temporal distortion element is rare, but not unique. 2 other merchants reported similar experiences on the same road in 1671 and 1702. Both abandoned that route permanently. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1568C. Classification: Tinker's account. Date of statement: 12th February 1568. Location: Cumbria Mountain Pass, England. Author: John Whitmore, travelling tinker. Account of John Whitmore. John Whitmore, tinker by trade. Do account for what befell me in the mountain pass. I travelled from Keswick to Penrith, my cart loaded with pots and tools. The February day was bitter cold, with snow on the high ground. The pass through the mountains is narrow, with steep sides rising on both hands. I had travelled this road many times and knew it well. Near the highest point, where the road runs between 2 peaks, my cartwheel struck a stone. The iron rim split, rendering the wheel useless. I stopped to assess the damage and consider my options. The day was drawing toward evening, and I was miles from any habitation. I decided to make camp and repair the wheel at first light. I moved my cart off the road to a small flat area. I gathered what wood I could find and made a fire. As darkness fell, the cold intensified. I wrapped myself in every blanket I possessed and sat close to the flames. Around midnight, I heard singing. The voice was high and clear, like a young boy's. It sang in Latin, words I did not understand but recognized from church services. The song echoed off the mountain walls, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. I called out, asking who sang there. The voice stopped immediately. Silence followed, broken only by the crackling of my fire. Then the singing resumed, louder than before. I stood and looked around, trying to locate the singer. The moonlight was bright on the snow, but I saw no one. The song changed. The voice dropped lower, becoming a man's voice. Then lower still, too deep for any human throat. It growled the Latin words, turning the holy hymn into something dark. I threw more wood on the fire, seeking light and warmth against the unnatural sound. The voice split. I heard two voices singing different parts simultaneously, then three, then more than I could count. A choir of voices, all emerging from the same source. They sang in discord, each following a different melody. The sound grew painful to hear. I covered my ears, but it made no difference. The voices came from inside my head now, not from the air around me. I fell to my knees, unable to bear it. The fire before me went out, not gradually, but all at once, as if snuffed by a giant hand. I sat in darkness with those voices screaming in my mind. I prayed every prayer I knew. I recited psalms and hymns. Still the voices continued. Then, one by one, they fell silent. The last voice to cease was the highest, the young boy's voice. It sang a final phrase and stopped. The fire rekindled itself. The flames sprang up exactly as they had been before. I remained kneeling, afraid to move. Around me, I heard footsteps in the snow, many feet, walking in circles around my camp. But I saw nothing. No tracks appeared in the snow. The footsteps continued until dawn. When the first light touched the mountain peaks, they ceased. I repaired my wheel with shaking hands and departed immediately. I have not traveled that path since. I take the longer valley road now, adding a day to my journey. Time is less precious than safety. John Whitmore, Traveling Tinker. Cumbria Mountain Pass, 12th February, 1568. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The mountain pass has been known locally as the Singing Road since at least the 1400s. Geological surveys reveal unusual acoustic properties in the rock formations. However, this does not explain the multiple voice phenomenon or the fire extinguishing. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1747V. Classification: Herbalist's travel record. Date of statement: 6 September 1747. Location: New Forest, Hampshire, England. Author: Eleanor Pritchard, herbalist. Record of Eleanor Pritchard verse. Eleanor Pritchard, herbalist and healer. Do record the events in the New Forest. I gathered medicinal plants in the forest depths. September is prime gathering time for many herbs I require. I knew the forest well, having collected there for 20 years. The afternoon was warm, with dappled sunlight through the ancient trees. I worked my way deeper into the forest, following a deer track to a marshy area. There grows a particular moss that soothes burns. I was bent over my work when I felt eyes upon me. The sensation was strong and immediate. I straightened and looked around. Nothing moved among the trees. The feeling persisted. I called out, asking if anyone was there. No answer came. I returned to my gathering, but the sensation grew stronger. I turned quickly, hoping to catch whoever watched. I saw it then. A child stood 30 paces distant, partially hidden behind an oak. A little girl in a white dress, her dark hair hanging loose. She did not move or speak, only stood and stared. I smiled and raised my hand in greeting. She remained motionless. I called to her, asking if she was lost. She stepped out from behind the tree. Her movements were stiff, as if her joints did not bend properly. Her face was blank, showing no expression. Her eyes were dark, too dark, like holes in her pale face. She began to walk toward me. Not the natural walk of a child, but a strange gliding motion. Her feet did not seem to touch the ground properly. I felt fear then, though I could not explain why. Something about her was deeply wrong. I gathered my basket and stood. She continued her approach, never blinking. I backed away, keeping her in view. She matched my pace exactly. When I stopped, she stopped. When I moved, she moved, always maintaining the same distance between us. I tried speaking to her again, my voice less steady now. Her mouth opened. A sound emerged that was nothing like a child's voice. It was a low hum, constant and toneless, like the sound of wind in an empty room. She raised one arm and pointed at me. Her finger extended impossibly far, stretching like clay. The finger pointed directly at my heart. I ran. Behind me, I heard that humming sound following. It grew louder, filling the forest. I crashed through undergrowth, abandoning the paths I knew. I needed only to escape. The humming stayed with me, always at the same distance. I burst out of the forest onto a cart track. The humming ceased instantly. I looked back. She stood at the forest edge, still pointing, still staring with those hollow eyes. I ran down the track toward the village. When I dared to look back again, she was gone. I reached home as evening fell. My daughter said I looked as if I had seen death itself. Perhaps I had. I have not returned to that part of the forest. The herbs I need can be found elsewhere, in less lonely places. Eleanor Pritchard, Herbalist, New Forest, Hampshire 6th. September 1747. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The New Forest has produced numerous accounts of child apparitions since the Norman period. This phenomenon typically involves a girl in white. No historical explanation has been established. Forest surveys in 1823 found no evidence of burial sites in the described area. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1612F. Classification: Courier's Road Testament. Date of statement: 18th April 1612. Location: North Yorkshire Road, England. Author: Thomas Merrick. Royal Courier Testament of Thomas Merrick I. Thomas Merrick, courier in royal service, do testify about the events of the 18th of April. I carried sealed dispatches from Durham to York. The April night was overcast, with no moon visible through the clouds. I rode a fast horse, as the messages were urgent. The road through North Yorkshire is well travelled, but isolated in places. Near the village of Coxwold, the road passes through a small wood. As I entered the trees, my horse became agitated. She slowed despite my urging, her ears constantly moving. I heard nothing unusual, only the normal night sounds. Then those sounds stopped. The silence was total and immediate. No owls, no rustling in the undergrowth, no wind in the leaves. My horse stopped completely and would not move. I dismounted to lead her forward. The darkness beneath the trees was absolute. My lantern seemed to provide less light than it should. I took 3 steps forward and stopped. A figure stood in the road ahead. I could barely make it out in the darkness. Tall and thin, wearing what appeared to be a long coat. It did not move or acknowledge my presence. I called out, identifying myself as a royal courier. The figure remained still. I took another step forward. It moved then, but not as a person moves. It flickered, like a candle flame guttering. One moment there, the next moment 3 paces closer. No walking, no movement between positions. It simply appeared nearer. I stood frozen as it flickered again. Now it stood directly before me, close enough that I should have seen its face, but there was nothing to see. Where a face should have been, there was only darkness. Not shadow, not the absence of light, but a void that hurt to look upon. It reached toward me. Its hand, if it was a hand, passed through my chest. I felt coldness so intense it burned. My heart seemed to stop, then restart with a painful lurch. The figure withdrew its hand. It flickered backward, resuming its original position on the road. I could move again. I grabbed my horse's reins and ran back the way I had come. The horse needed no urging. She ran with me willingly. Behind us I heard nothing. No pursuit, no sound. But I felt that void face watching until we left the wood. We reached Coxwold, and I pounded on the inn door. The keeper let me in, alarmed by my state. I spent the night there, the dispatches undelivered. At dawn, I continued to York by a different route. My superiors questioned the delay. I told them my horse had gone lame. The lie was easier than the truth. I have ridden past that wood many times since, always in daylight, always at speed. I do not look into the trees as I pass. Thomas Merrick, Royal Courier, North Yorkshire Road, 18th April 1612. Archivist Note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The wood, near Coxwold, was cleared in 1789 for farmland. The farmer who purchased the land reported that his workers refused to remove certain trees, claiming they felt watched. He eventually sold the property at a loss. It remains partially wooded. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1491 W. Classification Farmer's Road account. Date of statement 9th November 1491. Location Shropshire Hills, England. Author Richard Shepherd, sheep farmer, account of Richard Shepherd first. Richard Shepherd, farmer of Ludlow. Do account for what occurred on the hill road. I drove 12 sheep to market in Shrewsbury. The November day was grey and cold, with rain threatening. My dog, a faithful creature named Bess, walked beside the flock. We climbed the old hill road as afternoon shadows lengthened. The road passes between 2 ancient burial mounds at the summit. As we approached these mounds, Bess began to whimper. She dropped low to the ground, her hackles raised. The sheep scattered, bleating in terror. I had never seen my animals behave so wildly. I tried to gather them, but they would not be controlled. Then I saw why. Between the burial mounds, the air had changed. It rippled like heat rising from summer stones. But the day was cold, and this rippling was wrong somehow. It moved against the natural flow of things. A shape began to form within the distortion. At first, just a darkness, then gradually more defined, a man on horseback. But the horse was wrong. Too large, too dark, with eyes that glowed red in the grey light. The rider wore armour of a style I had never seen, ancient and barbarous, with a helmet that covered his entire face. He sat motionless, facing me across the road. Bess fled, running back down the hill, the sheep scattered in all directions. I stood alone before this impossible vision. The rider raised one gauntleted hand and pointed at me. From within his helmet came a voice. It spoke words in no language I recognized, harsh syllables that hurt my ears. The sound carried a weight that pressed against my chest. I tried to back away, but my legs would not obey. The horse began to move forward. Its hooves made no sound on the packed earth. As it approached, I saw that the ground beneath it did not change. No hoofprints appeared. The grass did not bend. It came within 10 paces of me. The red eyes of the horse fixed upon mine. I felt heat radiating from the creature, like standing near a forge. The rider spoke again, the same harsh language. This time I understood, though not through words. The meaning entered my mind directly. Turn back. This road is claimed. Turn back or be claimed as well. The vision began to fade. First the edges, then gradually the center. Within moments, only the rippling air remained. Then that too ceased. I stood alone on the empty road. My sheep were gone, scattered across the hills. Bess had vanished entirely. I found her 3 days later, cowering in a barn 5 miles distant. Of the 12 sheep, I recovered only 7. The others were never found. I no longer use that road. I take the valley path now, though it adds hours to the journey. The market traders ask why I avoid the hill. I tell them the road is too steep for my animals. Some lies are kinder than truth. Richard Shepherd, sheep farmer, Shropshire Hills. 9th November 1491. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The burial mounds date to the Bronze Age. Excavations in 1878 revealed weapons and armour fragments of unknown origin. The artefacts were sent to the British Museum, but were lost in a catalogue error. 3 other accounts describe similar armoured figures near ancient burial sites. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA 17266. Classification. Physician's travel record. Date of statement. 4th March 1726. Location. Scottish Highlands, Scotland. Author. Dr. Malcolm Fraser, travelling physician. Record of Dr. Malcolm Fraser Vifus as Dr. Malcolm Fraser, physician. Do record the events on the Highland Road. I travelled from Inverness to attend a difficult childbirth in a remote village. The March evening was clear, with stars beginning to appear. The Highland Road winds through hills and past dark lochs. I had ridden this path many times without incident. Near Loch Moor, where the road runs close to the water, I heard music. Fiddle music, lively and fast. It seemed to come from the loch itself. I stopped my horse and listened. The music was too perfect, each note impossibly clear. No human fiddler could maintain such tempo without tiring. I saw lights on the water, small flames dancing across the surface of the loch. They moved in patterns, swirling and diving. The music grew louder, more insistent. I felt a strange pull toward the water, a desire to leave the road and walk to the loch's edge. My horse resisted, pulling back. The animal's fear broke the spell that was settling over me. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. The lights moved closer to shore. Now I could see shapes within them. figures dancing, spinning in time to the music. They were luminous, glowing with the same light as the flames. As they neared the shore, I saw their faces, beautiful and terrible at once. Their eyes were too large, their smiles too wide. They gestured to me, beckoning me to join their dance. The music changed. It became a song I knew from childhood, a lullaby my mother had sung. But hearing it now filled me with dread rather than comfort. The dancing figures reached the shore and stepped onto land. They left wet footprints that glowed briefly before fading. Still they beckoned, still they danced. I spoke aloud, my voice shaking. I am called to attend a birth I must not delay. The music stopped instantly. The figures froze mid-dance. All their faces turned toward me. The smiles vanished. One step forward, closer than the others. It spoke in a voice like water over stones. A birth, he says. A beginning. We know endings. We are endings. Another figure laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Let him pass. Let him bring new life into the world. Soon enough, it will come to us. All life comes to us eventually. They retreated backward into the loch, walking on the water as easily as on land. The lights dimmed and descended beneath the surface. The music resumed, but distant now, muffled by water. I urged my horse forward at speed. I rode through the night, not stopping until I reached the village. The child was born healthy at dawn, a girl with strong lungs and a fierce grip. As I held her, I thought of those glowing figures. All life comes to us eventually. I pray it is not soon for this little one. I return to Inverness by a different route. When patients call me to villages beyond Lochmore, I send another physician. I will not travel that road at night again. Dr. Malcolm Fraser, Travelling Physician, Scottish Highlands, 4th March, 1726. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Scottish folklore, extensively documents water lights and dancing figures near lochs. This account's mention of recognisable music is unusual. The loch in question is notably deep, with no established depth measurement. 3 drownings occurred there between 1720 and 1730, all at night. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1583T. Classification. Monk's Journey Testament. Date of statement 17th January 1583. Location Cumbria, England. Author Brother Augustine, Benedictine monk. Testament of Brother Augustine. Brother Augustine of Furness Abbey. Do testify about my journey to Carlisle. I travelled to deliver documents to the bishop. The January day was bitterly cold, with snow heavy on the ground. I walked alone, as is the custom of our order when on pilgrimage. The road follows a river valley for much of its length. Around midday, I noticed something peculiar. My footprints in the snow behind me numbered more than my steps. I stopped and counted. For every print my boots had made, 2 appeared in the snow. The second set of prints was larger than mine. Bare feet, I realized, though how anyone could walk barefoot in such cold, I could not fathom. The prints had appeared beside my own, matching my pace step for step. I looked around carefully. No one walked near me on the empty road. I continued forward, watching behind me. The extra footprints continued to appear. They stayed precisely beside mine, never deviating. I stopped again and waited. The footprints stopped as well, No new ones appeared while I stood still. I said aloud, "Show yourself if you mean me no harm." The air beside me grew cold, colder than the winter day already was. My breath froze white, but now I saw other breath, misting in the air next to me, as if someone invisible stood at my shoulder, breathing. I prayed quietly, clutching my rosary. The cold intensified. I felt pressure against my habit, as if a hand gripped my shoulder. The grip was strong, almost painful. I continued my prayers, voice steady despite my fear. From the air beside me came a sound, weeping, a man weeping, the sobs muffled as if from behind a hand. The grip on my shoulder tightened. I stopped praying and stood in silence. The weeping continued for perhaps a minute. Then it changed to words, Latin words, spoken between sobs. Peccavi, peccavi, dimite mihi. I have sinned, forgive me. Over and over. The same phrases. I recognized them as words of confession. I am not a priest. I cannot hear confession or grant absolution. But I responded as best I could. God forgives all who truly repent. Go in peace. The grip released. The cold lessened slightly. The weeping faded. But the presence did not leave. I continued walking, and the footprints continued beside mine. For 5 miles we traveled together. The invisible companion never spoke again, only wept quietly. Near a crossroads marked by an old stone cross, the footprints stopped appearing. The presence lifted like a weight removed from the air. I looked back at the trail in the snow. 2 sets of footprints stretched behind me. At the crossroads, the larger prints ended. They did not continue on any of the 4 roads. They simply stopped, as if the walker had vanished mid-step. I completed my journey to Carlisle. I told the bishop what had occurred. He consulted old records and found mention of a monk who had died near that crossroads. The man had left the abbey in shame, his sins unconfessed. He froze to death in a winter storm 300 years before. His body was never blessed or properly buried. The bishop sent priests to perform rites at the crossroads. I have travelled that road twice since. The extra footprints have not appeared again. Brother Augustine, Benedictine monk, Cumbria, 17th January 1583. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Abbey. Records confirm a Brother Dominic disappeared in winter of 1283. His fate was unknown until this account. The crossroads mentioned was a common burial site for suicides and excommunicated individuals. Church records show blessing rites performed there in January 1583. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA1659H. Classification. Merchants Road Report. Date of statement. 26 August 1659. Location. Cornwall, England. Author, Peter Blackwood. Wine merchant. Report of Peter Blackwood. Ms. Peter Blackwood, merchant of Truro. Do report events on the coast road. I transported 3 casks of French wine from Falmouth to Bodmin. The August afternoon was hot and still. The coast road was quiet, most travellers seeking shelter from the heat. My cart horse moved slowly in the oppressive warmth. Near the cliff edge, where the road curved sharply, I heard knocking. 3 sharp raps, clear and loud. The sound came from behind me. I turned, thinking someone followed. The road was empty. 3 knocks, again, this time from my left. Still no one in sight. I urged my horse onward, uneasy now. The knocking began to follow a pattern. 3 raps, a pause, then 3 more. It moved around my cart, circling, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, sometimes beside. The horse became nervous, tossing her head. The knocking grew louder. Now it sounded as if made on wood, heavy fists pounding on the side of my cart. I stopped and climbed down to investigate. No marks appeared on the cart's wooden sides, yet the pounding continued, violent now. The entire cart shook with each impact. My wine casks shifted, and I feared they would break. I shouted, demanding whoever did this show themselves. The knocking stopped. Silence fell, thick and heavy. Then one of my casks began to move. It slid across the cart bed, though the cart stood level. The cask moved to the edge and tipped. I grabbed for it, but was too slow. It fell from the cart and struck the ground. The wood did not break, but the bung came loose. Red wine poured out onto the road. I knelt to right the cask. As I did, I saw something in the spreading wine. A shape, forming in the liquid. A face looking up at me from the wine. A man's face twisted in anguish. His mouth opened and closed as if trying to speak. No sound came, but I could read his lips. Help me, trapped. So long trapped. The face faded as the wine soaked into the earth. I stood quickly and backed away. The remaining 2 casks began to shake. They rattled in their places, as if something inside them pushed outward. I unhitched my horse and led her away from the cart. Behind me I heard wood cracking. Both casks split open. Wine flooded across the cart and onto the road. In the flowing liquid, I saw more faces. Dozens of them, appearing and disappearing. All with that same expression of desperate pleading. All silently screaming. The wine continued to flow until the casks were empty. Then the visions ceased. I stood in the hot afternoon sun, my entire cargo lost. My horse refused to approach the cart. I abandoned it there and led my horse to Bodmin on foot. The next day, I returned with men to retrieve my cart. The wine had dried on the road, leaving dark stains. The empty casks showed no sign of damage. They were intact, though I had seen them split. The men loaded everything back to Truro. I could not explain the loss of my cargo. I told my employer the casks had been damaged in transport. He accepted this explanation. I have not transported wine on that road since. When I must travel it, I carry only dry goods. And I travel quickly, never stopping near the cliff edge. Peter Blackwood, wine merchant, Cornwall, 26th August, 1659. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The coastal road was used for smuggling in the 1600s. Revenue men killed several smugglers near this location in 1652. Local legend claims their bodies were disposed of at sea. The connection to wine, if any, remains unexplained. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1472M. Classification. Nun's account. Date of statement 3rd December 1472. Location Welsh Marches, Wales. Author Sister Catherine, Cistercian nun. Account of Sister Catherine Muther. Sister Catherine of Tintern Abbey. Do account for what befell me returning from pilgrimage. I travelled from Hereford to our abbey with a small group of pilgrims. The December day was drawing to dusk when we reached the forest road. Our group numbered 5 souls, 3 women and 2 men. We walked in silence, as was proper. The forest grew dark quickly under the heavy clouds. One of the men carried a lantern to light our path. Deep in the forest, we heard a child crying. The sound came from somewhere off the road, among the trees. a pitiful wailing that tugged at the heart. One of the women suggested we search for the child. The men argued it might be bandits using a trick to lure travelers. We stood debating as the crying continued. Then we heard the voice. "Help me, please help me, I'm lost." A boy's voice, young and frightened. The woman who had first spoken moved toward the voice. We followed, unable to ignore a child in distress. The lantern light barely penetrated the darkness beneath the trees. We called out, asking the child to keep speaking so we could find him. I'm here, please hurry." The voice moved, always staying just ahead of us. We followed deeper into the forest. The child's cries became more desperate. "It's getting dark. I'm scared. Please find me." We searched for perhaps 20 minutes. The voice led us in what seemed like circles. Then one of the men stopped suddenly. "We have passed this tree before. I marked it in my mind. This is the third time." We stood in confused silence. The child's voice spoke again. "Yes, you have. Round and round you go, like a game." The tone had changed, no longer frightened but amused. The voice was also different now, older, though still childlike, and underneath the words ran something else. A sound like laughter, but wrong. The lantern flickered. In its unsteady light, we saw something hanging from a branch above us. At first, I thought it a dead animal. Then I saw it was a doll, crudely made from straw and cloth. Its stitched mouth was pulled into a grotesque smile. As we watched, the doll's head turned toward us. The child's voice came from it. "You came when I called, just like all the others." Around us in the darkness, we heard rustling, other things moving through the trees. The lantern went out completely. In the blackness, I felt hands grabbing at my habit. Small hands, cold and damp. I screamed and ran. All of us scattered, fleeing in terror. I ran without direction, branches tearing at my face. Behind me, I heard that voice calling, "Come back. We're not finished playing." Emma stumbled and fell. As I struggled to rise, my hand touched something on the ground. A shoe. A child's shoe, very old and rotted. Then another shoe beside it. Many shoes, I realized, scattered across the forest floor. Evidence of other travelers who had heard the crying child. I got to my feet and ran on. When I finally broke free of the forest, dawn was breaking. I found the road and followed it to the abbey. I was the first to arrive. By midday, 2 others had found their way back. 1 man and 1 woman. The other 2 members of our group never emerged from the forest. Search parties found no trace of them. Only their shoes, left behind in the darkness. Sister Catherine, Cistercian Nun Welsh Marches. 3rd December, 1472. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, the forest road has been rerouted 3 times since the 1400s. The original path is now overgrown. 23 pairs of shoes were recovered during a survey in 1688, all belonging to missing travellers. The area is now marked on maps as unsafe for night passage. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA 1754P. Classification. Blacksmith's Road Record. Date of statement. 7th July 1754. Location. Northumberland, England. Author. John Copper. Travelling blacksmith. Record of John Copper first. John Copper, blacksmith. Do record the events on the Northumberland Road. I travelled between villages, offering my services for shoeing and repairs. The July evening was clear and pleasant. I pushed my cart of tools along the packed earth road. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and red. Ahead, I saw a woman standing by the roadside. She wore a blue dress and held a basket. As I approached, she smiled and raised her hand in greeting. I stopped, thinking she might need assistance. "Good evening, mistress," I said. She continued smiling, but did not speak. I asked if she required help. Still no answer, only that fixed smile. I felt unease creeping over me. Her smile was too wide, showing too many teeth. I made to continue past her. She stepped in front of my cart. I tried to go around. She moved again, blocking my path. This happened 3 times. Each time I tried to pass, she anticipated my movement. Her smile never wavered. Her eyes never blinked. I stopped and studied her more carefully. Her dress, though it appeared blue at first, seemed to shift color. Sometimes blue, sometimes gray, sometimes black. The basket she held was empty, but shadows moved inside it. "Please let me pass," I said firmly. She opened her mouth wider. From inside came a sound like 1,000 whispers speaking at once. No words I could understand, just the rush of many voices. The sound grew louder until it hurt my ears. I covered my ears with my hands. She laughed then, and the laughter was worse than the whispers. It came from everywhere at once, not just from her. The air itself seemed to laugh. She reached toward my cart. Her hand passed through the solid wood as if it were mist. She pulled something out. My best hammer, which I had wrapped carefully in cloth. It floated in the air between us. Then another tool rose from my cart. Then another. All my implements floating around us like leaves in a wind. They began to spin, orbiting the woman, faster and faster until they blurred. She spread her arms wide. The spinning tools flew outward in all directions. They struck trees, embedded in earth, disappeared into grass. My entire livelihood scattered across the landscape. The woman's form began to fade. First her edges, then gradually all of her. Her smile remained longest, hanging in the air like smoke. Then even that vanished. I stood alone on the darkening road. My cart was empty. I spent the next 2 hours searching for my tools by moonlight. I recovered perhaps half of them. The rest were never found. I reached the next village and told the innkeeper what had occurred. He nodded grimly. "The woman in blue," he said. "She appears sometimes at dusk, always on that stretch of road, always by that particular tree. She takes things from travelers, never returns them." I asked if anyone knew why. He shrugged. "Some say she was a peddler's wife who was murdered on that road. Her husband killed her for unfaithfulness, buried her with her favorite blue dress and an empty basket. She takes from travelers what was taken from her. Life, they say, or joy, or purpose. All come to the same thing in the end. I replaced my missing tools at great expense. I avoid that road now, taking a longer route between villages. Time lost is better than tools lost, and tools are better lost than other things." John Copper, Travelling Blacksmith. Northumberland, 7th July 1754. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Parish records from 1689 document the murder of Margaret Denholm, wife of Peter Denholm, peddler. Her body was found near the location described. The dress and basket mentioned in the burial record match the description. No tools taken by the apparition have ever been recovered. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1528. Classification: Bailiff's Journey, Account. Date of statement: 19th October 1528. Location: Norfolk, England. Author: William Ashton, King's Bailiff. Account of William Ashton I, William Ashton, bailiff in the King's service. Do account for what I witnessed. I travelled from Norwich to collect rents from coastal villages. The October morning was bright but cold. I rode a strong mare, carrying documents and coins. The road through Norfolk runs through flat country with wide skies. Near midday, I noticed the birds. Crows, hundreds of them, flying in formation above the road. They moved in perfect unison, as if controlled by a single mind. Their flock descended and landed on the road ahead. They formed a black carpet across the path. My horse refused to approach. I dismounted and walked toward the birds. They did not scatter as crows normally do. They turned their heads in unison to watch me, hundreds of black eyes fixed upon me. I clapped my hands loudly. Not a single bird moved. I picked up a stone and threw it into their midst. The stone passed through them as if they were smoke. Yet they appeared solid, casting shadows on the ground. I stopped, my hand still raised. The crows began to speak. Not bird calls, but human words, all speaking together in perfect synchronization. Turn back, turn back, turn back. Over and over, the same two words. Hundreds of beaks moving in unison. Hundreds of voices speaking as one. I called out, asking who commanded them. They fell silent. For a moment, nothing moved. Then they took flight. All at once, rising into the air, but they did not disperse. They formed shapes in the sky above me. First, they formed letters, words spelling out death awaits. Then they formed a skull, then a gallows, then a grave. Each image held for several seconds before dissolving into the next. I stood transfixed by the impossible display. The final shape they formed was an arrow, pointing back the way I had come. Then the flock broke apart and flew away in all directions. I was left standing in the empty road. My horse had fled during the display. I found her a mile back, trembling in a ditch. I made camp that night, uncertain what to do. My duty required I continue, but the warning had been clear. At dawn, I continued forward. The villages I reached were empty, completely abandoned. Doors stood open, fire still smouldering. Food left uneaten on tables, but not a single living person remained. In the church of the first village, I found the priest. He lay dead in the pulpit, his face twisted in terror. No marks upon him, no sign of illness or injury, just fear, frozen in his features. The second village was the same. Bodies without wounds, fear without explanation. I returned to Norwich immediately. I reported what I had found. The authorities sent investigators. They found the villages exactly as I described. 43 dead, all showing signs of extreme terror. No cause was ever determined. The villages remain abandoned to this day. I remember the crows and their warning. They had tried to turn me back. They had tried to save me from what I would find. Or perhaps they had tried to prevent me from witnessing what they had done. I do not know which. William Ashton, King's Bailiff, Norfolk, 19th October, 1528. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The abandoned villages are documented in royal records. The event is known as the Norfolk death and remains unexplained. Some theories suggest plague, but no disease characteristics match. The villages were never resettled. The location of the Crow incident is still marked by travellers as Ill Luck Road. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1687L. Classification: Scribe's Travel Testament. Date of statement: 12th May 1687. Location: Exmoor, Devon, England. Author: Arthur Pemberton, travelling. Scribe Testament of Arthur Pemberton. First, Arthur Pemberton, scribe. Do testify about events on the Moor Road. I travelled to a manor house to copy legal documents. The May day was grey with low clouds. The road across Exmoor is exposed and lonely. I walked rather than rode, having no horse. My satchel contained parchment, ink, and quills. Around midday, fog descended rapidly. Within minutes, I could see only a few yards ahead. I continued forward, knowing the road was straight. Then I heard hoofbeats approaching. A single horse, moving at a steady trot. I stepped to the roadside to let the rider pass. The hoofbeats grew louder, drawing nearer. But no horse appeared through the fog. The sound passed me and continued down the road. I called out, confused. No answer came. The hoofbeats faded into the distance. I continued walking. Within minutes, I heard the hoofbeats again, approaching from behind, coming closer. Again they passed without any visible horse. This happened 7 times. Each time, the invisible horse passed me on the fog-shrouded road. On the 8th occurrence, I heard more than just hoofbeats. I heard the creak of leather, the jingle of bridle, the breath of horse and rider, everything but words. The sounds stopped directly beside me. I stood frozen as something moved past. The fog swirled as if disturbed by passage. An indentation appeared in the mud, a hoofprint, forming as I watched. Then another ahead of it. The invisible horse was leaving tracks. I followed them with my eyes. 4 sets of prints appearing one after another. They stopped suddenly, 20 paces ahead. The last print was only half formed, as if the horse had begun to disappear mid-stride. I heard a sound then, a wet, heavy impact, like a large body hitting the ground. The fog ahead of me turned dark, not with shadow, but with something that looked like smoke, black and thick, rising from where the hoofprints ended. From within that darkness came a scream, not horse, not human, but something that combined both, a sound of agony that echoed across the empty moor. I ran. I abandoned the road and fled across the rough ground. Behind me, the screaming continued. It seemed to chase me, growing louder. I fell into a stream, and the cold water shocked sense back into me. I followed the stream downhill, away from the road. After perhaps an hour, I found a shepherd's hut. An old man lived there with his dogs. He gave me shelter and listened to my story. He nodded slowly when I finished. The racing horse, he said, appears in fog, runs the same stretch of road endlessly, never completes the journey. Back in my grandfather's time, a rider was challenged to race. Pride and wager, as always. He rode too fast in the fog. His horse stumbled in a hidden ditch. Both broke their necks in the fall. They say you can hear him still trying to win that race, still riding toward a finish line he'll never reach. I stayed the night in the shepherd's hut. At dawn, I returned to the road. I found my satchel where I had dropped it. The contents were scattered, blown by wind. But the strange part was the hoofprints. They covered the road in both directions. Hundreds of them, overlapping. All the same size, from the same horse. As if the animal had galloped back and forth all night. As if it still searched for the end of that fatal race. Arthur Pemberton, Travelling Scribe Exmoor, Devon, 12th May, 1687. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The racing wager is documented in local records from 1623. The rider was Edward Marston, gentleman farmer. His death is confirmed, though details vary by account. The road section has been rerouted, but the original path still shows unexplained hoofprints after foggy weather. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1735D. Classification: Miller's Road Record. Date of statement: 29th September 1735. Location: Sussex, England. Author: George Whitfield. Miller, record of George Whitfield verse. George Whitfield, Miller of Lewis. Do record what occurred on the forest road. I travelled from Uckfield after purchasing new millstones. The September afternoon was warm and bright. The road through the forest was dappled with sunshine. I led my cart horse by hand, the weight of the stones requiring careful guidance. The forest was alive with birdsong and insect hum. A pleasant day for travel. Then the sound stopped. Not gradually, but in an instant. Complete silence fell over the forest. My horse stopped and would not move. I looked around, trying to understand what had changed. The light was different. The sun still shone through the leaves, but the quality had altered. Everything appeared slightly blurred, as if I looked through water. Ahead on the road, I saw a man walking toward me. He wore clothes of an old style, perhaps a century out of fashion. As he drew nearer, I raised my hand in greeting. He did not respond or slow his pace. He walked directly toward me with unwavering purpose. I moved aside to let him pass. He did not acknowledge me. As he came alongside, I saw his face clearly. His eyes were open, but saw nothing. His mouth moved continuously, forming words without sound. He passed me and continued up the road. I turned to watch him go. He walked perhaps 20 paces. Then he simply stopped existing. Not faded, not vanished behind something. He was there. Then he was not. As if he had never been. The horse whinnied nervously. I patted her neck to calm her. Movement caught my eye. The man appeared again on the road ahead, walking toward me just as before. The same purposeful stride, the same unseeing eyes. He passed me again, just as close as before. Again, I watched him walk 20 paces. Again, he ceased to exist. This occurred 17 times. 17 times he walked that same stretch of road. Each time identical to the last. On the 18th appearance, something changed. He stopped directly in front of me. His eyes, previously unfocused, fixed upon mine. His mouth, previously silent, spoke. The voice was hollow, like wind through a cave. I cannot find the house. I walk, but I cannot find it. Where is the house? He waited, as if expecting an answer. I found my voice, though it shook. What house do you seek? My house, my home. I was walking home, but the road has no end. I walk forever and find nothing. Where do you come from? I asked. I do not remember. I remember only walking, always walking. The road goes on and I cannot stop. He looked down at his legs as if they betrayed him. My feet will not stop. They keep walking even when I wish to rest. Please help me stop. I did not know what to say or do. I reached out to touch his shoulder. My hand passed through him like air. He looked at me with such despair. You cannot touch me. No one can. I am not here. But I cannot leave. He began walking again. This time his lips moved in prayer. I recognized the Latin words. Requiem aeternam dona eis, Domine. Grant them eternal rest, O Lord. He walked his 20 paces and disappeared. But this time he did not return. The normal sounds of the forest resumed. The light returned to its proper quality. My horse shook herself and continued forward willingly. I completed my journey, but the encounter stayed with me. I made inquiries in the village about men who had disappeared on that road. An old woman told me a story. A young man named Thomas Ridley had set out for home one evening in 1634. He was expected within the hour. He never arrived. His body was found 3 days later on the forest road. He had walked himself to death, back and forth on the same stretch of road. Footprints showed he had walked for miles without ever leaving a 100-yard section, around and around until his heart gave out. No explanation was ever found for his behavior. I believe I met Thomas Ridley, still walking, still trying to find his way home. George Whitfield, Miller, Sussex, 29 September, 1735. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Parish records confirmed Thomas Ridley's death in 1634. The coroner's report notes the unusual wear on his boots and the pattern of his tracks. The phenomenon has not been reported since 1735, suggesting the spirit may have finally found rest after this encounter. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1546V. Classification: Surgeon's travel account. Date of statement: 8th April 1546. Location: Lancashire, England. Author: Edmund Gray, surgeon. Account of Edmund Gray vs. Edmund Gray, surgeon. Do account for my experience on the Lancaster Road. I travelled to attend a patient in a village north of the city. The April evening was cold with rain beginning to fall. I rode my horse at a steady pace, hoping to arrive before dark. The road was empty of other travellers. As dusk fell, I saw a light ahead. It appeared to be a lantern, swinging as someone walked. I was glad to see another person on the lonely road. I called out to the figure ahead. The light stopped moving. I rode closer, intending to pass the traveller. As I drew near, I saw no one held the lantern. It hung in the air at the height a man might carry it. But no hand grasped it. No person stood beneath it. The light swung back and forth, as if carried by an invisible walker. My horse shied violently. I struggled to control her. The lantern began to move again. It travelled down the road ahead of me at walking pace, still swinging in that regular rhythm, still unattached to anything visible. I stopped my horse and sat watching. The light continued for perhaps 50 yards. Then it left the road. It moved off into the fields to the left, still at the same height, still swinging. It travelled in a straight line across the rough ground, over ditches and through hedges without deviation. I watched until it disappeared in the distance. My horse calmed somewhat. I continued down the road, uneasy, but seeing no other choice. I had ridden perhaps a quarter mile when I heard footsteps. Behind me now, heavy boots striking the ground. The pace matched a man's steady walk. I turned in my saddle. Nothing followed me, but the footsteps continued. They grew closer with each stride. My horse began to run without my urging. The footsteps matched her pace. No matter how fast we went, they stayed just behind, never catching up, never falling back. For 2 miles this pursuit continued. Then ahead, I saw the village lights. As we neared the first houses, the footsteps stopped. I turned again. The road behind me was empty, but in the mud, I saw them. Footprints. They ran the length of the road we had just travelled. deep impressions, as if made by a heavy man running. They stopped at the village boundary, not faded gradually, but ended cleanly, as if the runner had simply ceased to exist. I reached my patient's house, shaking with cold and fear. The family took me in and gave me brandy. I told them what had occurred. The father nodded grimly. "You've met the footsteps," he said. "They follow travelers on that road, have done for 20 years or more. Started after the hanging. A man was executed for murder at the crossroads. They left his body on the gibbet for a month as warning. Since then, travelers hear footsteps. See, the lantern he carried when he committed his crime. Some say he searches for his victim still. Others say he tries to outrun his own death. Either way, he's still out there, still walking that road." I stayed the night in the village. The next day, I returned to Lancaster by a different route. I have been called to that village many times since. I always take the longer road. Time is nothing compared to encountering that phantom again. Edmund Gray, Surgeon, Lancashire. 8th April, 1546. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft court records show James Murdoch was hanged at the Lancaster crossroads in 1524 for the murder of a travelling merchant. The lantern mentioned belonged to his victim. Similar reports of footsteps and lights continue to the present day, always in the same location. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1698S. Classification: Merchant's Journey Record. Date of statement: 15th June 1698. Location: Dorset, England. Author: Christopher Vale, salt merchant. Record of Christopher Vale. Christopher Vale, merchant of Dorchester. Do record events on the coast road. I transported salt from the shore works to inland villages. The June day was bright, with a strong wind from the sea. The coast road runs along cliff tops, with views of the ocean. I enjoyed the journey, the wind keeping me cool. Near midday, I noticed something strange. The wind had stopped, not merely calmed, but ceased completely. The grass stood perfectly still. The trees showed not a tremor. Yet moments before, the wind had been strong enough to lean against. The air felt heavy, pressing down on me. My ears felt blocked, as if I had descended into a deep valley. Then I heard the bells. They sounded distant, muffled, as if underwater. Hundreds of church bells ringing in unison. I looked around, confused. The nearest church was 5 miles inland. Even if every church in Dorset rang their bells, I should not hear them here. Yet the sound surrounded me. Above me, the sky began to darken. Clouds appeared from nowhere, forming rapidly. They moved against the normal pattern of weather, gathering in a spiral directly overhead. The center of the spiral opened into darkness. Through that opening, I saw stars. Stars in the middle of the day. The bells grew louder. Now they sounded less like church bells and more like something else. A ringing that hurt my ears and made my teeth ache. The darkness overhead spread. It blotted out the sun, though the clouds were not thick enough to do so. I stood in twilight under the midday sky. From the darkness came shapes. They descended slowly, drifting down like leaves. But they were not leaves. They were pages. Hundreds of pages of parchment falling from the sky. They landed all around me, covering the road and fields. I picked one up. It bore writing in Latin, beautiful script, like that of a monk's careful hand. But the words made no sense. They formed sentences that meant nothing. random words strung together without grammar or purpose. I picked up another page. More meaningless text in that same beautiful script. Another page and another. All the same. Perfect writing that said nothing. The pages continued to fall for perhaps 5 minutes. They piled up inches deep on the road. Then the bell stopped. The darkness overhead swirled and began to dissipate. The clouds broke apart and vanished. The sun shone bright again. The wind resumed, strong as before. It caught the pages and scattered them. They blew away across the fields and over the cliff edge. Within moments, all had been carried off. I stood alone in the normal June day, but my cart was covered in pages, stuck to the wood, caught in the ropes, buried under salt bags. I pulled them free and read them. Every page was different, yet all the same. Beautiful Latin script that meant absolutely nothing. I gathered them all and burned them that evening. As they burned, I heard that bell sound again, faint and far away, coming from the flames themselves. I asked at the nearest church about the bells. The priest said no bells had rung that day. No special service, no alarm, nothing. I asked what could cause parchment to fall from the sky. He crossed himself and would not answer, but he gave me a blessing before I left. I still travel that coast road. But when the wind stopped suddenly, I turned back. I will not be caught under that darkness again. Christopher Vale, Salt Merchant, Dorset, 15th June, 1698. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. No meteorological explanation for this event has been proposed. The Latin script phenomenon is unique in our archives. One fragment of the pages was preserved and is held in storage. Analysis confirms it is genuine parchment with real ink, but the text remains meaningless. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1573K. Classification Apothecaries Road Testament. Date of statement 2nd November 1573. Location Peak District, Derbyshire, England. Author Francis Morton. Apothecary Testament of Francis Morton III, Francis Morton, Apothecary of Bakewell. Do testify about the night of the 2nd of November. I travelled from Buxton carrying rare medicines for a wealthy patient. The November night was clear, with a full moon lighting the road. The Peak District Road winds through rocky valleys. I walked rather than rode, leading my pack mule. The animal carried valuable remedies that required gentle handling. Near midnight, I heard music, a pipe and drum, playing a merry tune. It seemed to come from ahead on the road. I was surprised to hear music at such an hour in such a place. As I continued, the music grew louder. Around a bend, I saw them. A procession of people walking toward me. Perhaps 20 souls, all dressed in festive clothes. They danced as they walked, keeping time to the music. At the front, a man played the pipe. At the rear, a boy beat a small drum. They seemed joyful, laughing and calling to one another. I stepped to the roadside to let them pass. As they drew near, I called out a greeting. None acknowledged me. They continued their merry procession as if I were not there. The first dancers passed within an arm's length of me. I saw their faces clearly in the moonlight. They smiled and laughed, but something was wrong. Their eyes did not move. They stared straight ahead, unblinking. Their mouths smiled, but the smiles never changed, fixed in place like masks. As more passed, I noticed other details. They walked in perfect unison. Every left foot struck the ground at exactly the same moment. Every right foot followed in perfect rhythm, No natural group of dancers could maintain such precision. The music played on, that same merry tune. But now I heard the wrongness in it. The notes were correct, but the rhythm was too perfect. No human musician could play with such mechanical exactness. I pressed myself against the rocks and let them pass. Dancers, musicians, all in their unnatural procession. The last to pass was a woman carrying flowers. She turned her head to look at me. Her fixed smile remained, but her voice spoke. Join us. Join our celebration. We dance forever, never stopping, never resting. Join us. The other dancers took up the call. Join us, join us, join us. All in the same tone, the same rhythm. As if one voice emerged from 20 mouths. I shook my head, unable to speak. The woman with flowers reached toward me. Her hands stretched impossibly far, extending like taffy. Her fingers brushed my cheek. The touch was cold, so cold it burned. I jerked away and ran. Behind me the music continued, but now it was faster, more urgent. The dancers were following, I realized. I could hear their synchronized footsteps behind me. All those feet striking the ground as one. A sound like a hammer pounding stone. My mule brayed in terror and pulled free. It galloped ahead into the darkness. I ran after it, abandoning everything else. The synchronized footsteps pursued. Always the same distance behind. Always that same rhythmic pounding. I ran until I could run no more. I collapsed on the road, gasping. The footsteps stopped. The music ceased. Silence fell. I looked back. Nothing moved on the moonlit road. But I could see them. Standing perhaps 50 paces distant. All of them. Perfectly still now. All facing me. All with those fixed smiles. We remained that way for what seemed like hours. They watched me. I watched them. Neither moving. Then the church bells of Bakewell rang in the distance. At the first toll, the dancers began to fade, becoming transparent, like morning mist. By the last toll, they had vanished completely. I found my mule, an hour later, still trembling. Half my medicines had fallen and broken. I returned to Bakewell as dawn broke. I learned later that the 2nd of November is All Souls' Day, when the dead are remembered. Perhaps some dead do more than remember. Perhaps some refuse to stay in their graves. Francis Morton, Apothecary Peak District, Derbyshire, 2nd November, 1573. Archivists note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, All Souls' Day reports are common in our archives. This procession description matches accounts from 1489, 1521, and 1603, all on the same road. Local legend speaks of a wedding party that disappeared in 1447. 20 people left for a celebration and were never seen again. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1761B. Classification Priest's Road. Record. Date of statement 24th February 1761. Location Wiltshire, England. Author Reverend Peter Ashworth. Record of Reverend Peter Ashworth. S. Reverend Peter Ashworth. Do record what occurred on the Salisbury Road. I travelled from my parish to attend a meeting of clergy. The February afternoon was cold but clear. I rode my horse at a comfortable pace. The road was quiet, few travelling in such weather. Near an old stone bridge, I heard someone calling my name. Peter, Peter Ashworth. The voice was familiar, though I could not place it. I stopped and looked around. No one was visible on the road or in the nearby fields. Peter, over here. The voice came from beneath the bridge. I dismounted and walked to the edge. Below, by the stream, I saw a figure, a man in black clothes waving to me. "Come down, Peter. I must speak with you." Something in his tone commanded obedience. I found myself climbing down the bank. As I reached the stream's edge, I saw him clearly. My old mentor, Father William. He had been dead for 3 years. I stopped, frozen in shock. He smiled, the same kind smile I remembered. "Do not be afraid. I have come with a message." "You are dead," I whispered. "Yes, but death is not the end of duty. You taught me that in your sermons." He stepped closer. "I have been sent to warn you. Do not attend the meeting." "Why? What danger awaits me?" "The bridge. The bridge will collapse today. 7 men will die in the waters. You will be among them if you continue." I stared at him, unable to process his words. "How can you know this?" "I know many things now, things hidden from the living. Trust me, Peter. Turn back." He began to fade, becoming transparent. "Wait," I called out. "I have questions. About death. About what comes after. Those are not your questions to ask. Not yet. Go home. Live longer. Your work is not finished." He vanished completely. I stood alone by the stream. I climbed back to the road, shaking. I looked at the bridge. It appeared solid enough. Stone and timber, well maintained. But Father William's warning echoed in my mind. Tien remounted my horse. I sat there, torn between duty and warning. Logic said to continue. Fear said to retreat. I turned back. I rode home, feeling foolish the entire way. That evening, a rider came with news. The stone bridge had collapsed at 3 p.m. A coach carrying clergymen to the meeting had been crossing. 7 men drowned in the icy water, all dead. I should have been among them. Father William had saved my life. But questions plague me still. How did he know? Why was he sent to warn me specifically? What powers do the dead possess that we do not understand? And most troubling of all, who sent him? Reverend Peter Ashworth, Wiltshire, 24th February 1761. Archivist note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, the bridge collapse is documented in county records. 7 clergy died as described. Reverend Ashworth's absence from the meeting was noted, but not questioned. He served his parish for 30 more years, dying in 1791. His personal writings contain numerous other encounters with Father William's spirit, always bearing warnings or advice. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 134 5 N. Classification: Shepherd's Road account. Date of statement: 13th August 1345. Location: Yorkshire Dales, England. Author: Oswald Beck, Shepherd. Account of Oswald Beck, Oswald Beck, Shepherd. Do account for what befell me on the Dale Road. I drove my flock from summer pasture to the village. The August evening was warm, with the sun low in the sky. My sheep moved steadily along the familiar path. I walked behind them with my staff and dog. The road descended into a narrow valley. High stone walls rose on both sides. As we entered this passage, my dog began to bark. She backed away from the valley entrance, hackles raised. The sheep refused to continue forward. They milled about, bleating anxiously. I tried to drive them on, but they would not move. Then I heard it, a sound like grinding stone, deep and rhythmic, echoing off the valley walls. It came from ahead, growing louder. The ground beneath my feet began to vibrate. Small stones bounced and rolled. Around the bend appeared something impossible. The stone wall was moving. The entire structure, 15 feet high, was sliding along the road toward us. Not crumbling or falling, but moving as one solid piece. It scraped against the opposite wall, throwing sparks. That was the grinding sound. Stone against stone, advancing steadily. Behind the moving wall, I glimpsed darkness. Not the darkness of night, but something absolute. A void that hurt to look upon. The wall continued forward, blocking the entire width of the road. There was no way past it, no way through it. It would crush anything in its path. I grabbed my dog and ran. The sheep scattered in all directions. Behind me, that grinding sound continued. I could feel the ground shaking with each scraping advance. I ran until I burst from the valley into open ground. I turned to look back. The moving wall had stopped at the valley entrance. It stood there, blocking the passage completely. Then it began to sink, descending into the earth like a closing door. Within moments, it had vanished entirely. The road appeared normal, as if nothing had occurred. My sheep gradually calmed, and I gathered them. I approached the valley entrance cautiously. The road showed no sign of disturbance. No gouges from scraping stone. No displaced earth. But I would not enter that passage. I drove my flock over the hills instead, adding hours to the journey. We reached the village well after dark. The next day, I returned with 3 other men to examine the valley. We found nothing unusual. The stone wall stood solid and unmoving. But at the point where I had seen the wall stop, we found something. A sheep's skull, very old and weathered. It had been crushed flat, as if under enormous weight. One of the men said his grandfather had spoken of this valley. Travelers who entered at certain times never emerged. Their animals would be found scattered outside, but the travelers themselves simply vanished. Taken, the old man said, behind the moving stone. Taken to whatever waited in that absolute darkness. I use a different route now, though it is longer and harder. My sheep live. I live. That is enough. Oswald Beck, Shepherd Yorkshire Dales, 13th August, 1345. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, the valley has been known as Dead Man's Cut since the 1200s. Geological surveys found no fault lines or explanation for ground instability. 6 documented disappearances occurred there between 1290 and 1401. The valley road was abandoned in 1450. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA 1672F. Classification. Peddler's Journey Record. Date of statement. 30th October, 1672. Location. Cornwall, England. Author Samuel Trenton, travelling peddler. Record of Samuel Trenton. Samuel Trenton, peddler of sundry goods. Do record events on the Cornish road. I travelled from Truro to outlying farms, selling needles, thread, and small wares. The October night fell early, catching me far from shelter. I continued walking, hoping to reach an inn before full darkness. The road wound through moorland, exposed and treeless. A half moon provided some light. As I walked, I heard a sound behind me, a rattling, like chains being dragged. I turned, but saw nothing on the empty road. The sound continued, staying always at the same distance. I quickened my pace. The rattling matched my speed. I stopped. It stopped. I called out, demanding to know who followed. The rattling answered, growing louder. From the darkness came a shape, low to the ground, moving with an unnatural gait. As it drew closer, I saw it more clearly. A dog, but wrong in every detail. Too large, nearly the size of a calf. Its eyes glowed green like marsh lights. Chains hung from its neck, dragging behind. But the chains were not iron. They appeared to be made of bone. Small bones linked together in a grotesque parody of metalwork. The creature stopped 20 paces from me. It sat as a dog might sit, but its posture was wrong, too upright, too human-like. It opened its mouth, the jaws extended impossibly wide. From within came a voice, not barking, but human speech. Turn back while you can." The voice was hollow, echoing as if from a deep well. "What are you?" I whispered. "Guardian, warning, mercy shown this once. Turn back or proceed to your judgment. What lies ahead? The gathering, the taking, the weighing of souls. Your soul is not ready to be weighed." The creature stood. Its bone chains rattled as it moved. "I show you kindness human souls showed me in life. Turn back." It turned and walked off the road into the darkness. The chains dragged behind, leaving furrows in the earth. Within moments, it had vanished. I stood trembling, clutching my pack. Every instinct screamed at me to heed the warning. But pride made me curious. What gathering lay ahead? What judgment? I continued forward, moving carefully. After perhaps a mile, I saw lights, many lights, scattered across the moor. Candles or lanterns carried by people walking. They converged on a single point ahead, a standing stone that rose from the moorland. I left the road and crept closer through the heather. Dozens of figures gathered around the stone. They wore hoods and carried lights. But as I watched, I realized something terrible. They cast no shadows. The lights they carried illuminated nothing. And when they moved, they glided rather than walked. One figure stood apart, on top of the stone. It raised its arms and spoke. The language was not English, not Latin, not any tongue I knew. The gathered figures responded in unison, the same unknown words spoken by all. The figure on the stone pointed into the darkness. From that direction came a sound of weeping. A person stumbled into the circle of lights. A man, I thought, though I could not see him clearly. The hooded figures surrounded him. They placed their hands upon him. Where they touched, he began to fade. Not vanish, but become transparent. I could see through him, see the standing stone beyond. He screamed, a sound of pure anguish. The scream cut off suddenly. He was gone completely. The hooded figures turned as one, all facing my direction. I ran. I crashed through heather and bracken. Behind me I heard that hollow voice again. "I warned you. I warned you." The bone-chain creature appeared before me on the road. "Run then. Run and do not look back. You were not meant to see." I ran until dawn. I reached the inn at Bodmin and collapsed. When I recovered, I learned it was the night before All Hallows Eve. When the veil grows thin, they say. When the dead walk and conduct their business. I sold my pack and left Cornwall. I have never returned. Samuel Trenton, Travelling Peddler, Cornwall, 30th October, 1672. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The standing stone is known locally as the judging stone. Folklore holds that souls are weighed there on All Hallows Eve. The bone-chain dog appears in several accounts, always as a warning. Its nature remains unexplained. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA151ATEM. Classification: Mason's Road Testament. Date of statement: 17th May 1518. Location: Northumberland, England. Author: Hugh Calder, stonemason. Testament of Hugh Calder Fur. Hugh Calder, stonemason. Do testify about events on the border road. I travelled from Berwick to examine ruins for possible stone salvage. The May morning was grey with fog rolling in from the sea. The road followed the coast, with cliffs dropping to the water. I walked alone, carrying my tools. The fog grew thicker, reducing visibility to mere yards. I heard horses approaching from ahead. Multiple horses, moving at speed. I stepped off the road to let them pass safely. The sound grew louder, the pounding of hooves on packed earth. But no riders appeared through the fog. The sound passed me and continued down the road behind. I turned to watch, confused. Still nothing visible, yet the sound was clear. I continued forward, unnerved. Within minutes, I heard them again, approaching from behind now. I stepped aside once more. Again the sound passed without any visible riders. This occurred 7 times. Each time, invisible horses racing past. On the 8th occurrence, something changed. The hoofbeats were joined by shouting. Men's voices calling out in anger and fear. The clash of weapons, the screams of dying horses. A battle, I realized. An invisible battle, playing out on the foggy road. I stood frozen as the sound surrounded me. Swords striking armor. Men crying out in pain. Horses shrieking in terror. All of it so clear, so close, yet nothing to see. I felt something strike my shoulder. A hard blow that knocked me sideways. But nothing physical had touched me. Warm liquid splashed across my face. I wiped it away, expecting blood. My hand came away clean, yet I had felt the wetness clearly. The battle sounds reached a crescendo. Then silence fell, complete and absolute. The fog remained thick around me. I stood breathing hard, my heart racing. Then I heard moaning, the sound of wounded men. It came from all around me, from the road and the fields beside it. Dozens of voices crying out in pain, calling for help, calling for their mothers, calling for God. I tried to help, searching blindly in the fog. My hands found nothing. The moaning continued. One voice rose above the others, close beside me, as if lying at my feet. Water, please, water. I knelt and reached out. My hand touched fabric, rough wool, soaked with something wet. I felt further up, found a chest, felt the beating of a heart beneath my palm. But I could see nothing. A man lay dying beneath my hands, yet remained invisible. I cannot see you, I said. We cannot be seen, the voice replied, weak and fading. But we are here. We are always here, fighting the same battle, dying the same deaths, day after day, year after year. What battle? I asked. I do not remember. I remember only the fighting, the dying, the pain. We cannot stop, cannot rest, cannot leave this place where the heart beneath my hand stopped beating. The warmth faded. The moaning voices grew distant. They faded gradually, like echoes dying away. The fog began to lift. I knelt alone on the empty road. My hands were clean, though I had felt blood and fabric. I stood and examined the ground. No bodies, no blood. No sign any battle had occurred. But the road surface was scarred. Deep gouges, as if from weapons. Hoofprints overlapping, concentrated in one area. These marks were old, weathered by years of rain and sun. I continued to the ruins as planned, but I could not focus on my work. I returned to Berwick before nightfall. I asked at the inn about battles on that road. An old soldier told me the tale. In 1455, a skirmish between Scottish raiders and English defenders. 30 men dead on both sides. The bodies were left unburied, carrion for birds. Perhaps that is why they remain. Unburied, unblessed, unable to rest. Doomed to fight forever. Hugh Calder, stonemason, Northumberland, 17th May, 1518. Archivists. Note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, military records confirm the 1455 skirmish. The site was later sanctified in 1620 after multiple reports. The battle sounds decreased but never fully ceased. Modern visitors still report occasional phantom sounds on foggy days. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1743W. Classification: Physician's travel record. Date of statement: 9th December 1743. Location: Scottish Highlands, Scotland. Author: Dr. James Morrison, physician. Record of Dr. James Morrison Worst. Dr. James Morrison, physician of Edinburgh. Do record what transpired in the Highlands. I travelled to attend a wealthy laird's family. The December afternoon was cold, with snow beginning to fall. The Highland road wound through mountains and pine forests. I rode a sturdy Highland pony, accustomed to rough terrain. As evening approached, the snow fell more heavily. I sought shelter, but found none. The road became difficult to follow in the gathering darkness. Then I saw a light ahead, a window glowing warm in the snow. I rode toward it gratefully. A cottage stood beside the road, smoke rising from its chimney. I dismounted and knocked at the door. A woman opened it, elderly but spry. She welcomed me inside immediately. The cottage was warm and clean, simply furnished. A pot of stew bubbled over the fire. She offered me food and a place by the hearth. I accepted gratefully, warming myself. We spoke of the weather and the road ahead. She advised me to stay the night, as the way was treacherous in snow. I agreed, exhausted from travel. She showed me to a small room with a bed. I lay down and fell asleep instantly. I woke to silence, complete silence. No fire crackling, no wind outside, nothing. The darkness was absolute. I called out for the woman. No answer came. I felt for the door and found it. It opened not into the cottage, but into emptiness. I stepped forward cautiously. My foot found no floor. I was standing at the edge of something. I knelt and reached down. My hand touched snow. I was in a doorway that opened onto the hillside, but there was no cottage behind me, only more snow. I scrambled back and felt around desperately. Stone walls, yes. A roof, yes. But no furniture, no fire, no warmth. I found my tinderbox and struck a light. I stood in ruins. An ancient cottage, long abandoned. The roof had mostly fallen in. Snow covered the floor. No hearth, no pot, no bed. Only crumbling stone and emptiness. On the wall, I saw something. A mark carved into the stone. I moved closer to examine it. A name and a date. Margaret Fraser, 1689. Below it, words in Gaelic. I know only a little of that tongue, but I understood enough. Died alone in the snow. None came to help. I stumbled out into the night. My pony stood where I had left it, covered in snow. I had been inside the ruins for hours, yet felt I had only just arrived. I rode on through the darkness. At dawn, I reached the laird's estate. I told the housekeeper of my experience. She nodded sadly. Margaret Fraser's cottage. Many have sheltered there over the years. She welcomes travellers as she wished someone had welcomed her. But the cottage burned in 1689. She died in the ruins, frozen in the snow. Her hospitality continues, though she has nothing to give but illusion. Some say it is kindness, some say it is curse, to show travellers the warmth they cannot truly have. I shuddered, remembering the comfort I had felt, the warmth that was not real, the food I had not actually eaten. I stayed 3 days at the laird's estate. On my return journey, I passed the ruins. In daylight, they looked as I had seen them by tinderbox light, broken, abandoned, lifeless. But as I rode past, I saw movement in the window, a figure watching me go, an elderly woman waving farewell. I raised my hand in return. She smiled and faded from view. Dr. James Morrison, physician, Scottish Highlands. 9th December 1743. Archivists note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The Fraser Cottage ruins remain standing. The carved inscription is genuine. Over 40 accounts describe similar experiences of being welcomed and sheltered, only to wake in empty ruins. The phenomenon is considered benevolent by locals. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA1497Q. Classification: Friars Road account. Date of statement: 22nd July 1497. Location: Hampshire, England. Author: Brother Martin, Franciscan Friar. Account of Brother Martin where? Brother Martin: do account for what occurred on the forest road. I walked from Winchester to Portsmouth on pilgrimage. The July day was hot, the sun intense overhead. I sought shade where I could find it. The road passed through dense forest, offering respite from the heat. Near midday, I heard singing ahead. A man's voice, beautiful and clear. He sang a hymn I knew well from services. I was pleased to meet another traveller of faith. I called out a greeting as I walked. The singing stopped. I rounded a bend and saw him. A man standing in the middle of the road. He wore a monk's habit, brown like my own. But as I drew closer, I saw his face. It was covered by a mask. Not a cloth covering, but a silver mask. It covered his entire face, moulded to match, human features. But the eyes were empty holes. Through them I saw only darkness. "Brother," I called, "why do you wear such a thing?" He did not answer. He raised one hand and beckoned me closer. I approached cautiously. He began to sing again, the same hymn, but something was wrong with it. The words were backwards, Latin phrases reversed, turning prayer into something else, something that made my skin crawl. I stopped, recognizing this as wrong. "Stop," I commanded. "You desecrate holy words." He continued singing, louder now. His hand still beckoned, more urgently. I stood my ground and began to pray, the Lord's Prayer, spoken clearly and firmly. At my words, he stopped singing. He tilted his head, as if listening. Then he spoke. The voice came not from behind the mask, but from all around. "Delaculum, delaculum, dies venit." Dawn, dawn, the day comes. He repeated these words over and over. His whole body began to shake. The mask started to crack, thin lines spreading across the silver surface. From the cracks, light began to shine. Bright, too bright to look at directly. I shielded my eyes. The light grew more intense. The figure's shape became indistinct, consumed by brilliance. I heard one final word from within the light. "Liberatus, freed." The light flashed so brightly I was blinded. I fell to my knees, my eyes burning. When my vision cleared, the road was empty. No man, no mask, no light. only a scorch mark on the ground where he had stood, and scattered around it, dozens of silver coins. I picked one up. It was ancient, bearing the profile of a Roman emperor. I gathered all the coins and brought them to the church at Portsmouth. The priest examined them with amazement. "These are from the reign of Nero," he said. "Nearly 1400 years old. Where did you find such treasure?" I told him the entire story. He listened gravely, then nodded. A soul trapped for centuries, perhaps, bound by some sin or curse. The reverse prayers were his prison. The correct prayers were his key. You freed him, brother. Blessed be your journey that brought you to that place. The coins were melted down and used to cast a new bell for the church. When it rings, it has the most beautiful tone I have ever heard. Some say you can hear words in its ringing. Liberatus, they claim. Freed. Brother Martin, Franciscan Friar, Hampshire, 22nd July 1497. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Roman coins from Nero's reign have been found along that road. Historians theorize an early Christian martyr may have been executed there. The bell mentioned still hangs in Portsmouth and is known for its unusual resonance. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1624. H classification. Wool merchant's record. Date of statement 5th March 1624. Location Cotswolds, England. Author Robert Fairfax, wool merchant. Record of Robert Fairfax first. Robert Fairfax, merchant. Do record events on the Cotswold Road. I transported wool from villages to Oxford markets. The March evening was clear and cold. My cart was heavily laden with the first spring shearing. I employed a young man to help drive the cart. His name was Thomas, a willing worker, though simple-minded. As night fell, we continued our journey, hoping to reach an inn. The road climbed through hills, winding between stone walls. Thomas suddenly grabbed my arm. "Master, look ahead. Do you see it?" I looked but saw only the empty road. "See what, boy?" "The procession. All those people walking." I saw nothing, yet Thomas stared intently ahead. "Hundreds of them, master, all in white, walking toward us." His fear was genuine, though I saw no cause for it. "There is nothing there, Thomas. The road is empty." "No, master. They're coming closer. Can you not see them?" I stopped the cart, concerned for the boy's state of mind. Thomas climbed down and backed away from the road. "They're passing us now. So many, old and young, men, women, children." He turned his head, following something I could not perceive. "They're looking at us, master. They know that I can see them." His voice dropped to a whisper. "One is coming closer. An old woman. She's speaking to me." "What does she say?" I asked, though I felt foolish. She says they walk from the old church to the new. The old church was destroyed. They have nowhere to worship. So they walk, every night, seeking their sanctuary. Thomas fell silent, his eyes still tracking something invisible. Then he gasped. "Master, she's touched me. Her hand is cold, so cold." He stumbled and fell. I caught him, and his skin was indeed frigid, colder than the night air could account for. He trembled violently in my arms. "They're angry," he whispered. "Angry that their church was destroyed. Angry that they were forgotten. They want to be remembered. They want their sanctuary restored." Thomas went limp. I thought him dead, but his heart still beat. I lifted him into the cart and drove quickly to the nearest village. The innkeeper helped me carry Thomas inside. We placed him by the fire and wrapped him in blankets. It took hours for warmth to return to his body. When he woke, he remembered nothing of the procession, but his hair, which had been dark brown, had turned white. All of it in that single night. I made inquiries about churches in the area. An old man told me of St. Bartholomew's. It had stood on the hill for 600 years. In 1580, it was demolished by order of the crown. The stones were used to build a manor house. The graveyard was ploughed under for farmland. Folks say the dead still walk the old path to Sunday service, he said. Those with the sight can see them. Most cannot. But all who see them are marked by the encounter. Thomas left my service the following week. His white hair shamed him, though he remembered nothing of how it happened. I heard later he had entered a monastery. I no longer travel that road after dark, and I have contributed funds toward building a memorial, a small chapel on the site where St. Bartholomew's once stood. Perhaps the procession will end when they have a sanctuary again. Perhaps they will finally rest. Robert Fairfax, wool merchant. Cotswolds, 5th March, 1624. Archivist note. Some archivist note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, St. Bartholomew's demolition is documented in church records. The memorial chapel was built in 1628. Reports of the procession decreased significantly after its consecration. Thomas became Brother Thomas at Gloucester Abbey, where he died in 1671. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA 1589V. Classification. Tax Collector's Road Testament. Date of statement. 18th November 1589. Location. Dartmoor, Devon, England. Author Geoffrey Ward. Tax Collector. Testament of Geoffrey Ward First. Geoffrey Ward. Collector of taxes for the Crown. Do testify about the Moor Road. I travelled from village to village recording tithes owed. The November day was cold and overcast. I rode my horse across the high moor. The landscape was bleak, all grey stone and brown grass. Near a tor that jutted from the moor, I noticed something unusual. A door, standing alone on the open moor. Not attached to any building, just a door in a frame. It stood upright, surrounded by nothing but empty land. I rode closer to investigate this oddity. The door was made of dark wood, well crafted. It had a handle of brass that gleamed despite the grey day. I dismounted and walked around it. The door stood in its frame with nothing behind or before it. I could see straight through where a door should block my view. Yet when I stood directly in front, I saw wood, a solid door, closed and intact. I reached out and touched the handle. It was warm, despite the cold day. I tried to open it, more from curiosity than purpose. The handle turned easily. The door swung open. But instead of revealing the empty moor behind, it opened onto somewhere else. A room, a well-furnished room, with a fire burning in the hearth. I stood in cold November wind, looking into a warm interior. This was impossible, yet I saw it clearly. A voice spoke from within the room. Come in from the cold." An old man sat in a chair by the fire. He gestured welcomingly. "You look frozen, traveller. Warm yourself." Every instinct told me to flee, but the warmth was so inviting. The cold bit through my coat. I stepped closer to the doorway. The old man smiled. "Just one step, and you'll be warm forever." Something in his tone made me pause. "Forever?" I asked. "Forever and ever. Warm and safe and never cold again." His smile widened, showing too many teeth. Many have accepted my invitation. Many travelers, tired and cold. They stepped through and found warmth eternal. Would you like to see them? He gestured to the shadows behind his chair. Shapes moved there. People, I realized. Dozens of them, standing in the darkness. Their eyes reflected the firelight like animals' eyes. They are so happy, the old man said. Never cold, never hungry, never tired. Never able to leave, I whispered. His smile vanished. Clever man, clever, clever man. Few realize until too late, but you see truly. Will you step through anyway? The cold is bitter. The moor is cruel. I offer eternity by the fire. I step backward, away from the door. I will endure the cold. The old man's face twisted in anger. Then endure it forever. He waved his hand. The fire in the hearth blazed up. The people in the shadows opened their mouths and screamed. I turned and ran to my horse. Behind me, I heard the door slam shut. I mounted and rode without looking back. When I finally dared to turn around, the door was gone. Only empty moorland remained. But I saw something else. All across the moor, scattered at wide intervals. Doors. Dozens of doors, standing alone, all closed, all waiting. I rode through them carefully, giving each wide berth. As I passed one, I heard that voice again, calling from behind the wood. Come in from the cold. I did not stop until I reached the village. I marked my map that night. Every door I had seen, noted carefully. I sent the map to the authorities. I do not know if they acted on it, but I know I warned them. I know I tried. Geoffrey Ward, tax collector, Wardmore. Devon, 18th November, 1589. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Local folklore speaks of the doors on the moor that appear during November. The map mentioned was found in Crown records, but dismissed as madness. 3 travellers disappeared on Dartmoor in winter of 1589. Their bodies were never found. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1706T. Classification: Herbalist Travel Account. Date of statement: 4th June 1706. Location: Welsh Mountains, Wales. Author: Catherine Hughes, herbalist. Account of Catherine Hughes I. As Catherine Hughes, herbalist. Do account for my journey through the mountains. I travelled from Caernarfon to collect rare plants in high valleys. The June day was fair and warm. The mountain path was steep but well marked. I walked with my collection basket and cutting tools. The valley I sought was remote, requiring several hours of climbing. Near midday, I heard music. Not the music of instruments, but of human voices. A choir, singing in perfect harmony. The sound echoed off the mountain walls. I followed the music, thinking I might find a chapel. Perhaps travellers like myself, pausing for prayer. The singing grew louder as I climbed higher. It was beautiful, the most perfect choral music I had ever heard. Yet something about it unsettled me. The voices were too perfect. No breath between phrases, no variation in tone or volume. Like a music box, mechanical in its precision. I crested a ridge and looked down into a small valley. Below me, I saw them. A circle of standing stones, and within the circle, figures. Perhaps 30 people, all dressed in white. They stood in rows like a church choir. Their mouths moved in unison, creating the music. But as I watched, I realized they did not stand on the ground. They floated, several inches above the earth, suspended in air. Their feet did not touch the stones or grass. The singing continued, that same perfect harmony. I stood transfixed, unable to look away. One of the figures turned its head toward me, then another, then all of them, all those heads turning at once, all those faces looking up at me. They had no eyes, just smooth skin where eyes should have been, but I felt their attention upon me nonetheless. The singing changed. The words, which I had not understood before, became clear. Join us, join us, join the song, sing forever, join us. The figures began to move toward the edge of the circle, still floating, still singing, all moving in my direction. I backed away from the ridge. My foot caught on a stone and I fell. I tumbled down the hillside, my basket flying from my grasp. When I stopped rolling, I lay gasping and bruised. I could still hear the singing, but it sounded distant now, muffled. I scrambled to my feet and ran, down the mountain, abandoning my basket and tools. I did not stop until I reached the valley road. When I finally dared to look back, I saw nothing unusual, just mountains and sky. The singing had stopped. I returned to Caernarfon empty-handed. My husband asked about my disheveled state. I told him I had fallen, which was true enough. But I could not speak of what I had seen. 2 weeks later, I heard news. 3 shepherds had climbed into that same valley. They had not returned. A search party found their bodies arranged in a circle. Their mouths were open, as if in song, but they had been dead for days. I knew then what fate I had escaped. The choir had sought new voices. I no longer collect plants in the high mountains. Some valleys are better left unvisited. Catherine Hughes, Herbalist, Welsh Mountains, 4th June, 1706. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The standing stone circle is known as Silk I Cantorion, the singer's circle. Local tradition forbids entering it. The 3 shepherds' deaths were attributed to falling, but the positioning of their bodies remains unexplained. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA1463L. Classification. Knights Road Record. Date of statement 27th September 1463. Location Shropshire, England. Author Sir William Montfort, Knight. Record of Sir William Montfort I. Sir William Montfort, Knight of the Realm. Do record what befell me on the border road. I rode from Ludlow to inspect lands granted by the King. The September afternoon was pleasant, with autumn colours in the trees. I rode alone, as the journey was short and the lands peaceful. The road crossed a river via an ancient stone bridge. As I approached the bridge, I saw a figure standing upon it, a woman in a green dress watching the water below. I slowed my horse, intending to pass with courtesy. As I drew near, she turned to face me. Her beauty was remarkable, her face pale and perfect. "Good day, lady," I said, bowing from my saddle. She smiled but did not speak. I made to ride past her. She stepped in front of my horse. "I beg your pardon," I said. "I must cross." She continued to smile, still silent. I tried to guide my horse around her. She moved with unnatural speed, blocking my path again. "Lady, please, I have business beyond this bridge." Finally she spoke. Her voice was like water flowing over stones. "A price must be paid to cross my bridge." "Your bridge?" I asked. "This is the King's bridge. It was mine long before any king claimed these lands." What price do you demand? A memory. I laughed, thinking this some game or jest. A memory. Very well. I give you the memory of my 10th birthday. Done, she said. She reached toward me. Her hand passed through my skull like mist. I felt cold fingers inside my head. Then she withdrew. I sat in my saddle, confused. What had I been thinking about? Cross, she said, stepping aside. I rode over the bridge, troubled but unable to say why. I completed my business and returned the same way. The woman stood on the bridge again. You return, she said. Another price must be paid. I paid already, I protested. That was to cross going forward. This is to cross going back. What price now? Another memory. Give me your first tournament. I wanted to refuse, but her eyes held me. Very well. Take it. Again her hand passed through my head. Again that cold touch within. I rode on, now feeling an emptiness I could not define. For years, I used that bridge regularly. Each time she was there. Each time she demanded a memory. First love, first battle, father's death, mother's face, my wedding day. One by one, she took them all. I knew something was wrong, knew I was losing precious things, but I could never remember what I had lost, only that each crossing left me emptier than before, until today. Today I returned to find her waiting once more. What price now? I asked, weary of this strange toll. Give me your name. My name. Your true name. The one your mother called you. I opened my mouth to answer, but I could not remember it. I knew I had a name, but it would not come to my mind. What was I called? Who was I? You have taken too much, I whispered. I have taken only what you gull freely. Each time you chose to cross rather than take the long way. Each time you valued convenience over memory. Now you have almost nothing left. Give me your name, and the emptiness will be complete. You will be free of the burden of self. I turned my horse and rode away. I did not cross the bridge. I took the long way, adding hours to my journey. I will never use that bridge again, but I fear it is too late. I'm writing this now while I still remember that I should have a name, while I still remember there are things I have forgotten. Soon even that knowledge will fade. I will be a man with no past, a knight with no history, a soul emptied of everything that made me myself. Do not cross the Green Lady's bridge. No convenience is worth what she takes. Sir William Montfort, Knight, Shropshire, 27th September 1463. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The bridge was destroyed in 1520 and replaced with a newer structure. Stories of the Green Lady persist. A man matching Montfort's description was found wandering near the site in 1465. He could not remember his name or origin. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA165P. Classification: Baker's Road Testament. Date of statement: 11th January 1651. Location: Essex, England. Author: Henry Whitaker. Baker Testament of Henry Whitaker III. Henry Whitaker Baker. Do testify about events on the market road. I transported bread and cakes to the weekly market. The January morning was cold but clear. My cart was loaded with goods for sale. I walked beside my horse, leading her carefully. The road was icy in places, requiring caution. Ahead, I saw a man sitting on a milestone marker. As I approached, I offered greeting. He looked up at me with eyes full of sorrow. "Are you well, friend?" I asked. I am lost, he replied. Lost? The village is just ahead, no more than a mile. Not lost in place, lost in time. I thought him addled, perhaps by cold. Come, walk with me. You'll warm as we go. I cannot move from this spot. Why not? Because I died here. I stepped back, startled. He smiled sadly. You see me then. Most do not. You are a ghost. I am memory, perhaps. I am what remains. What happened to you? I sat down to rest 300 years ago. The cold was so bitter that day. I sat just for a moment. I closed my eyes. I did not open them again. Until now. Until you stopped. Why me? I asked. Because you chose to. Because you showed kindness. Most walk past without seeing. But you stopped. You asked if I was well. That simple kindness has power. He stood then, rising from the milestone. Thank you for seeing me, for acknowledging I exist. What will you do now? Now I can leave. Now I can finally move from this spot. Your kindness has freed me from the stone. He began to fade, becoming transparent. Wait, I called. What is your name? I do not remember. It has been too long. But I remember the cold, and I remember sitting down to rest. Tell others if you can. Tell them not to rest too long in winter. Tell them to keep moving no matter how tired. The cold takes you so gently, you do not realize until too late. He vanished completely. I stood alone on the cold road. The milestone bore no inscription, no mark, just weathered stone, old beyond reckoning. I continued to mark it with a heavy heart. That evening, I told the story at the inn. An old woman listened carefully. The milestone is from Roman times, she said. Many have died on that road over the centuries. Winter takes the old, the weak, the unlucky. Perhaps your ghost was Roman, perhaps Saxon, perhaps Norman. Does it matter? He sat and froze and waited. 300 years, he said. Perhaps 3 times that. You gave him peace. That is what matters. I return to that milestone now and then. I leave bread there, wrapped against the weather, for the next traveller who might need it, for the next person who might sit down to rest, so they do not wait 300 years, so they do not become memory tied to stone. Henry Whitaker, Baker, Essex, 11th January 1651. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The Roman milestone is preserved and marked. Archaeological surveys have found no graves nearby, but soil analysis suggests ancient human remains may be scattered in the area. Whitaker's tradition of leaving bread continued until his death in 1682. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file. NOA1549R. Classification. Midwife's Journey. Record. Date of statement. 16th August 1549. Location. Suffolk, England. Author. Agnes Thornton, midwife. Record of Agnes Thornton. First, Agnes Thornton. Midwife. Do record what occurred on the night of the 16th. I was called to attend a difficult birth in a distant farmstead. The August night was warm and humid. I walked the road with my bag of herbs and instruments. The full moon lit my way clearly. I had walked perhaps 2 miles when I heard crying. A baby's cry, coming from the roadside. I stopped, listening carefully. The crying continued, urgent and distressed. No baby should be alone on a night road. I left the path and searched in the tall grass. I found it there, wrapped in white cloth. A baby, perhaps 2 months old. It cried piteously, its face red with distress. I picked it up, cradling it gently. "Hush, little one. You're safe now." The baby's crying stopped immediately. It looked at me with dark, dark eyes. Too aware, those eyes. Too knowing for an infant. I felt unease creep over me. "Where is your mother?" I whispered. The baby smiled. Not the automatic smile of infants, but a deliberate expression. It reached up and touched my face. The fingers were cold. So cold. They burned. I tried to pull away, but I could not move. The baby's grip was impossibly strong. It pulled itself closer to me. Its mouth opened wider than any infant's mouth should. From within came a sound. Not crying now, but laughter. Adult laughter, deep and mocking. It spoke, and the voice was not a child's. "Midwife, bringer of life. Tell me, do you also bring death?" I found my voice and screamed. The baby thing released me. I stumbled backward and fell. When I looked up, it stood upright. A baby standing like a man. The white cloth fell away. Beneath was something twisted and wrong, the shape of a baby, but the essence of something ancient. So many children you have brought into this world. So many lives begun by your hands. I would have you bring me through as well. Birth me into this world again. Let me walk among the living once more. I understood then what it asked. It wanted to possess me, to use my body as a vessel, to be born through me into life again. "No," I said firmly. "I refuse." The thing's smile vanished. "Then I will take what I need." It began to walk toward me on those tiny legs. With each step, it grew, becoming a child, then a youth, then a man. But always wrong, always twisted. I pulled iron scissors from my bag. Cold iron, which my grandmother said could turn away evil. I held them before me like a cross. "Begone. You have no claim to this world or to me." The thing stopped. It looked at the iron with hatred in those dark eyes. Iron, always iron. Why do the living cling to it so? Because it protects us from the likes of you. The thing began to shrink, becoming a man, then a youth, then a child, then a baby once more. It lay on the ground, wrapped in white cloth. But now I saw the cloth for what it was, a burial shroud. The thing was dead, had been dead for a very long time. "I am gone," it whispered, "but I will return. This road remembers me. Other travelers will hear me cry. Other kind souls will pick me up. One day, someone will not have your iron. One day, I will be born again." It faded, becoming transparent, then nothing. The shroud remained empty on the ground. I kicked dirt over it and marked the spot with stones. I continued to the farmstead. The birth I attended was difficult, but mother and child survived. As dawn broke, I walked home by a different road. I have not used that path at night since, and I carry cold iron always, in my bag, in my pocket, sewn into my hem. Protection against things that should not walk, against the dead who seek return. Agnes Thornton, Midwife, Suffolk, 16th August, 1549. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The location described was used for unbaptized infant burials in medieval times. Church records show 17 such burials between 1400 and 1530. The practice ended after reports of crying in the night became common. The road was rerouted in 1560, end of file. Proceeding to next recovered document, case file, NOA1782D. Classification: Messenger's travel account. Date of statement: 3rd October 1782. Location: Scottish Lowlands, Scotland. Author: Andrew Campbell. Royal Messenger. Account of Andrew Campbell. First, Andrew Campbell, Messenger in Royal Service. Do account for my final journey. I carried urgent dispatches from Edinburgh to Glasgow. The October evening was cloudy and dark. I rode a fast horse, needing to reach Glasgow before midnight. The road through the lowlands was well maintained but lonely. Near the village of Lanark, my horse began to act strangely. She slowed despite my urging, her ears constantly moving. Then she stopped completely and would not move forward. I dismounted to examine her, thinking she had injured a hoof. As I bent to check her legs, I heard breathing. Heavy, laboured breathing, like someone running hard. It came from behind me on the road. I turned and saw nothing. The breathing grew louder, closer, accompanied now by footsteps. Someone running toward me at great speed, yet the road remained empty. I stood frozen as the sounds passed me. The invisible runner continued down the road ahead. The footsteps faded into the distance. My horse calmed somewhat, and I remounted. I rode forward cautiously. Within a quarter mile, I found it. A body, lying in the middle of the road. A man, face down, his clothes torn and muddy. I dismounted and checked for life. He still breathed, though barely. I turned him over gently. His face was my face. I looked down at myself, lying in the road. My own features, my own clothes. But aged, haggard, worn beyond my years. The dying man opened his eyes. My eyes looked up at me. "You," he whispered. "Finally, you arrive." "Who are you?" I demanded, though I knew. "I am you. I am who you become." "This is impossible. I am dying here tonight. I have died here tonight. For 3 years, I have died here, over and over. Trapped in the moment of my death. Running from what killed me, only to fall and die again. But now you have come. Now the loop can be broken. What killed you? What killed me?" He smiled, blood on his lips. "You will know soon. They are coming even now. The bandits. They wanted the dispatches. I ran. I almost escaped. But they caught me here. Run. Run faster than I did. Perhaps you will live." He died then, my future self dying in my arms. As his eyes closed, his body began to fade, becoming transparent, then vanishing completely. I heard shouting behind me, men's voices, rough and angry. Torches appeared in the darkness. Bandits, just as my dying self had warned. I leapt onto my horse and rode. Behind me, they gave chase. I rode harder than I ever had before. My horse, sensing my terror, gave everything she had. We flew along that dark road. The bandits fell behind, unable to match our pace. I am Dunnesar, reached Lanark, and did not stop. I rode through the village and beyond. I did not stop until I reached Glasgow. I delivered the dispatches, my hands shaking. I told the authorities about the bandits. They sent soldiers to patrol the road. 3 men were captured the following week. Thieves and murderers, responsible for many deaths. But I know the truth. I know I should have died that night. Would have died, had I not met my own corpse. Had I not been warned by my own future ghost. I am alive because death showed me itself. I have resigned my position as messenger. I will not tempt fate again. I have been given a second chance. I will not waste it riding lonely roads in darkness. Andrew Campbell, Royal Messenger, Scottish Lowlands, 3rd October 1782. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The bandits captured confessed to multiple murders on that road. Campbell's account was filed but not made public due to its unusual nature. He lived to age 72, dying peacefully in 1824. This remains one of our most puzzling cases of temporal phenomenon. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. Case file NOA 1637S. Classification: Pilgrim's Final Testament. Date of statement: 21st December 1637. Location: Somerset, England. Author: Michael Preston, Pilgrim. Final Testament of Michael Preston. Michael Preston. Do write this as my last act in this world. I travelled as a pilgrim, seeking holy sites across England. This December day, I walk a road I should not have taken. The winter sun sets early, and I am far from shelter. The road crosses empty moorland with no habitation visible. As dusk falls, I see something ahead, a light, warm and inviting. I walk toward it gratefully. As I draw near, I realize my mistake. The light comes from a fire, but it burns without wood or fuel. It simply exists, hanging in the air like a lamp. Around it stand figures, 7 of them, cloaked and hooded. They do not move or speak. They simply stand, facing the fire. I try to turn back, but my legs will not obey. I walk toward them as if pulled by invisible strings. One of the figures turns to face me. Beneath the hood is nothing. Not darkness, not a face, but nothing at all. A void in the shape of a head. It speaks without mouth or voice. The words form directly in my mind. Another joins us. Another walks the endless road. I try to speak, to ask what this means, but I have no voice. I look down at my hands. They are fading, becoming transparent. I am disappearing, becoming like them. I understand now what this is. These are the lost. Travelers who walked into something they could not leave, trapped between one step and the next, between one breath and the next, between life and whatever comes after. I feel myself forgetting. My name slips away, my home, my family, my purpose, all fading like morning mist. Soon I will be like them. A cloaked figure standing by an impossible fire, waiting for the next traveller to join our number. I write this quickly, while I still remember how. I leave this paper weighted with stones beside the road. Perhaps someone will find it. Perhaps they will read and understand. Do not follow strange lights. Do not approach fires that burn without fuel. Do not trust what seems like warmth in cold places. Some hospitality is a trap. Some welcomes lead nowhere but forgetting. I am gone now. Not dead, but not alive. Lost in the space between. Walk carefully, traveller. The road takes more than it gives. Michael Preston, Pilgrim, Somerset, 21st December, 1637. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. This document was found in 1688, weighted with stones as described. No other trace of Michael Preston exists. 7 stones stand in a circle at this location. Travellers report seeing lights there, always at dusk. All who investigate find only empty moorland. End of file. Case closed to public record. The original document remains sealed within the vaults of the British Museum. The NOA archive remains committed to documenting phenomena that defy conventional understanding. These cases are submitted for academic review and further investigation. Further access requires written authorization or curiosity strong enough to ignore the warnings. Until next time, these are the National Occult Archives.